Chapter 259. What are you looking at? After Song Yu finished washing the dishes, she wiped her hands on her apron and walked out of the kitchen. Although Su Xinqing's ghosts had returned to Sakura apartment one after another after playing enough and could help with the housework, there were ordinary people in Sakura apartment. Although ordinary people couldn't see ghosts, it was better to be careful not to make too many supernatural phenomena. Secondly, Song Yu felt that doing the housework herself would make her feel more at home. After walking out of the kitchen, she immediately saw Chiketsu, who was nestled on the sofa and looking at his phone in a daze. Song Yu had a good impression of this little girl who had been quiet all the time, so she couldn't help but talk to her. Because of her sudden greeting, Ichiyue trembled for a moment. Then, she raised her head and looked at Song Yu in a daze. I'm looking at a photo, she replied in a low voice. At this time, Song Yu had also seen the picture on the screen of the girl's phone. It was a family photo of the little girl, but although it was a family photo, it was actually just a photo taken casually with the phone. A middle-aged man was hugging a young woman, and the woman was holding a British short hair in her arms, and Chiketsu was between the two. Judging from her actions in the photo, she should be taking a selfie with her phone. Are those your parents? Song Yu naturally also noticed the girl's timidity, so she didn't talk to her too aggressively, which would easily cause her to be disgusted. Instead, she tried to gently guide the other party and let the other party take the initiative to bring up a topic. The girl nodded first, then lowered her head with some disappointment. In my phone there are 3 photos of all 3 of them, only this one. In the girl's villa, there should be other photos of her parents, but when Su Xinqing brought the girl back to Sakura apartment, except for some clothes, they almost didn't bring anything, so it was naturally impossible for there to be such photos. I'm sorry about your parents, but I think people should always look forward. Song Yu, who knew what happened from Su Xinqing, tried to comfort her. Your parents' souls in heaven wouldn't want to see you immersed in sadness all the time, right? However, maybe this kind of comfort was too versatile, or maybe Chiketsu had long been tired of this kind of comfort, but judging from the girl's expression, it obviously didn't have much effect. Song Yu also noticed this, so she couldn't continue to let the girl be sad, so she simply tried to change the topic. Is the cat in your mother's arms? It's so cute. This sentence was not a compliment, but Song Yu's heart felt. The cat in the photo had soft gray fur, and its lazy expression matched its bright yellow eyes very well. It looked very beautiful, and with the fluffy ears on both sides of its head and the fluffy feeling brought about by its young age, it exuded a sense of cuteness. It was no wonder that Song Yu was attracted to it. Yes, it's called Blue. Ichiyue nodded. That's quite appropriate. Although she didn't have a cat, Song Yu actually quite liked cats. Naturally, she knew that people in Jiangjin would abbreviate British short-hair cats as blue cats to distinguish them from American short-hair cats. Why didn't you bring it to Sakura apartment? Song Yu asked curiously. Well, even though Sakura's apartment was filled with all kinds of strange creatures and events, it was indeed the right choice not to bring the cat along. But usually, under such circumstances, the cat would be brought along. Blue has already passed away. The girl's expression became sad again. Sorry. Song Yu heard and immediately apologized, but the little girl shook her head, indicating that it didn't matter, so Song Yu asked again. Did it also die in that car accident? No, Blue died because it was sick, the girl replied softly with a nasal voice. The girl replied softly. Her voice was nasal, and it seemed like she was about to cry. My father and I buried it under the hibiscus tree in the courtyard. Something was wrong. Su Xinqing scratched his face and began to follow the clues that flashed through his mind. First of all, he didn't know what happened to the meat paste, but he was sure that it died outside the room where Chiketsu's father hid the antiques and treasures. Moreover, it was the tragic type that turned into meat paste without even touching the door. Thinking about it carefully, even Su Xinqing almost fell for it. That strange space was really too strange. Although a treasure like the Tomb of the Three Kings would definitely be very famous once it was discovered. But fame and ability weren't necessarily the same. Could the Tomb of the Three Kings have the ability to create that strange world? Furthermore, could the Tomb of the Three Kings have killed Chiketsu's parents? To be honest, Su Shenxing felt that the thing didn't seem to be as powerful as it seemed. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been forced to work overtime here. In addition, the meat paste and the attack on Su Shenxing were a bit difficult to explain. After all, there were security guards in the villa, and the security guards often patrolled the villa. Su Shenxing was sure that many of the security guards patrolled the route he just took. But the others weren't attacked by the strange statue like he was. It wasn't that Su Shenxing looked down on the security guards here, but he always felt that if he let the statue attack, at least not many of the security guards would be able to escape. But until now, there had never been any news of the security guards going missing. This probably meant that the act of pulling people into a strange space and killing them wasn't done unconsciously, but had some kind of trigger mechanism. Only people who were defined as intruders would be attacked. The Tomb of the Three Kings didn't have this kind of ability. To be able to do this, it wasn't something that had more literary meaning than practical significance like the Tomb of the Three Kings. It had to be at least a complicated formation. Then the question was, could a formation that could automatically identify intruders and react to them be made by coincidence? Unfortunately, Su Shenxing didn't believe this. In other words, Jiketsu's father, Su Shenxing's stepfather, was probably not an ordinary person. Of course, in addition to that, there were some other doubts, but it was better to confirm the most important point first. Even if Su Shenxing was an idiot in magic, he had seen a lot of storms and waves. As long as it wasn't too obscure, he could basically see the reason why it was. Chapter 260. Sure enough, it's not normal. After returning to the villa's underground warehouse where the antiques were hidden, Su Shenxing carefully looked at the layout inside and muttered softly. This time, the phenomenon of dragging people into a different space was not activated. He didn't know if that thing only worked on one person once, or if it was because the black screen knew that this thing was useless to Su Shenxing, so it didn't activate. In short, after carefully observing the layout of the warehouse, Su Shenxing didn't find any traces of magic or formation complex enough to be activated in special circumstances. However, the abnormality of the warehouse itself was also exposed under Su Shenxing's careful observation. First of all, there was a logical abnormality. There were a lot of antiques in this warehouse. Even Su Shenxing, who didn't know much about antiques, could roughly tell that many of the things in there were expensive. At least, he probably couldn't afford to buy them in his lifetime if he only worked as a snack vendor. But if there were only these things, there were a lot of strange things in some of the antiques in the underground warehouse. For example, there was a bunch of green foxtail in an antique flower screen, 3 steamed buns in a blue and white porcelain plate, and plain water in a green jade wine bottle in addition, because of the magic power sealed in his body that was enough to pinch the earth like a ball of mud. Su Shenxing was very slow to sense ordinary energy. It wasn't that he couldn't sense ordinary energy, but that for him, the amount of electricity in a battery and the amount of energy produced by a nuclear bomb explosion were almost the same level. If he didn't carefully feel it, there was no way to distinguish between the two. Only after careful observation and perception could he determine the amount of a certain energy through some of the surrounding reference objects. In the underground warehouse, in addition to the electric power carried by the wires buried in the wall, there was another kind of special energy flowing. Su Shenxing had never seen this kind of energy on Earth. It was neither the Jinqi in Qin Xingyan's body, nor the demon power carried by monsters, nor the divine power of gods. If he had to describe it, it was somewhat similar to the curse power or spiritual power used by the Yin-Yang master Hanakeyuan Yuan in Japan. However, compared to Hanakeyuan Yuan's curse power, this kind of power flowing in the air of the warehouse was thicker and colder, and also a little strange. After carefully experiencing it, Su Shenxing even had the illusion that he smelled blood. This strange power weaved a big net, connecting most of the antiques in the underground warehouse, including the conspicuous Tomb of the Three Kings. Su Shenxing felt that if the black screen was willing, any antique connected with this kind of power could produce an illusion similar to the Tomb of the Three Kings in a different space. In fact, it was true. What Su Shenxing didn't know was that if it wasn't him but an ordinary person, even if they could escape the pursuit of the sheephead monster statue, in the illusion of the Tomb of the Three Kings, they would have been eroded by the 1,000-year-old resentment. If it was light, they would have gone crazy, and if it was serious, their brain would have died. Su Xinxing was immune to all kinds of illusions, and his spiritual power was even more powerful. Even if he didn't wave his hand to shatter the space in the illusion at that time, in the end, the illusion would have collapsed due to the difference in spiritual power between them, revealing the original appearance of the underground warehouse. After strolling around the underground warehouse for a while, Su Xinxing took out his phone and found that there was actually a signal here, so he called Qin Xingyan and described what he saw to the girl, trying to see if he could get some information from her. Originally, he didn't have much hope. After all, the energy flowing in this space was too strange, and it didn't seem like the power system of cultivators. Although Xingyan A Dream knew a lot about cultivation, her knowledge of other supernatural aspects couldn't even compare to Chihaya Fukuyama, who was just an ordinary person a month ago, in fact, a man-god now. In the end, he didn't expect that Qin Xingyan really did know some of these things. The green foxtail is probably a symbol of the Taoist cloud. The cloud was originally used to drive away mosquitoes and the like, but now it can be extended to drive away all kinds of unnecessary things. If I'm not wrong, the 3 steamed buns should be filled with pork, beef, and mutton. These 3 are the so-called 3 animals in the past, and the steamed buns themselves also have an illusion. Is it the one about Zhuge Liang? Su Xinxing had also heard of this rumor, so he asked casually. Although some places now referred to steamed buns without fillings, dating back to an even older era, steamed buns were actually filled with fillings. According to legend, when Zhuge Liang pacified the southern barbarians, he had to cross a big river, but the river was extremely turbulent, and there was no way to build a bridge and ferry boats. The locals said that only by sacrificing human heads to the river god, the river would calm down. Zhuge Liang couldn't bear to kill civilians in order to cross the river, so he took their heads to sacrifice to the river god. Therefore, he killed sheep and pigs, wrapped the meat in dough, called them steamed buns, and threw them into the river to replace the human heads. As a result, the river calmed down, and the steamed buns became a popular Chinese snack that had been passed down until now. That's right. The steamed buns themselves originated from rituals used for sacrifice, so they can be used as a tribute. When the meat contained in the steamed buns are pigs, cows, and sheep, the effect of the sacrifice will be several times better, and many rituals can be used. It's the cheapest and most useful ritual and formation core of this era, without exception. How should he put it? The ritual items of this era were unexpectedly popularized. I'm not too sure about the last green jade wine bottle, but if I'm not wrong, the water in it is probably not plain water but rainwater. This kind of water was also mentioned in Journey to the West. It belongs to the category of rootless water, and in the ancient times of the Celestial Empire, it was considered the cleanest water. Although modern technology has broken this saying, in many cases, the main thing that constitutes a ritual or formation is not the effect of the object itself, but the meaning it contains. The green foxtail grass dispels interference, the 3 animals' steamed buns as the core, and the rootless water drives spiritual energy. As long as they are placed properly, these 3 can form a very common formation. With that, Qin Xingyan explained the relevant situation of the formation to Su Xinxing in detail. After she finished speaking, the expression on Su Xinxing's face changed into a look of understanding. Thanks, if everything goes well. Maybe after this matter is solved, I can still make it home in time for dinner. After hanging up the phone, Su Xinxing left the warehouse and walked slowly toward the villa's hall. Chapter 261. According to Qin Xingyan, the formation set up in the warehouse was probably some kind of energy channel to connect the antiques. Due to the fact that the materials used to cast it and the conditions for casting it were very popular, this kind of formation was widely spread. There was no way to determine who set up the formation based on this fact alone. However, Su Xinxing could at least confirm one thing. Since the formation in the warehouse that was related to the alternate dimension did not have the ability to self-regulate, there must be a shady figure controlling everything in this villa. After understanding this point, the next step was much simpler. He just had to find out who the shady figure was and punch it out of the window. Although, mainly due to the author's slow update speed, The situation seemed to be a mess at first glance, and he did not know where to start. Su Xinqing received a text message from Xiao Jingyi about the preliminary investigation of the case. After thinking about it carefully, he realized that all of this was not that complicated. After a little investigation, many people would know that Chiketsu's father was involved in the underground antique trade. Then, if he followed this line of investigation, he would know that the car accident that Mr. and Mrs. Chow encountered was not a coincidence. There were certain traces of human intervention. Although the driver who caused the accident did not admit to it, Xiao Jingyi still managed to find some clues through the side investigation. If it was an ordinary person's train of thought, after investigating this point, they would more or less conclude that Mr. and Mrs. Chow had connections with criminals because of the underground antique trade. Then, for some reason, the criminals wanted to eliminate the insiders, so Mr. and Mrs. Chow were killed. Even Xiao Jingyi's text message came to this conclusion. However, after considering the situation in the warehouse, Su Xinqing did not agree with this conjecture. The formation in the warehouse was obviously not set up by an outsider. It was most likely set up by Chiketsu's father himself. To be able to come into contact with real supernatural forces, Chiketsu's father was probably not an ordinary person. However, such a person was killed just because of a car accident. No matter how he thought about it, something felt wrong. What made Su Xinqing even more suspicious was why there was only one coffin at the funeral when Mr. and Mrs. E had already passed away. At first, Su Xinqing thought that it was just because his relatives were stingy, but now that he thought about it carefully, he was afraid that there was some secret behind it. It was because of this that he returned to the hall and stared at the coffin that had yet to be buried. I've heard of an illusion that doesn't take effect by interfering with the five senses of others. Instead, it directly interferes with the person's judgment. Everyone who is affected by it will subconsciously think that the situation is normal no matter what they see. Although it wasn't night yet, the heavy, opaque curtains were drawn over the windows, so the hall gave off a gloomy and terrifying feeling, not to mention the coffin placed in the middle of the hall. For example, they knew that they were attending two people's funerals, but there was only one corpse. In the end, they only used one coffin to consecrate it, but they didn't feel anything strange about it at all. As he spoke, Su Xinqing walked to the coffin and reached out to lift the coffin lid that was nailed to the ground. Other than that, no one else could easily know the patrol route of the security guards and make preparations to hide in advance except for the original owner of the castle, right? A rotten smell spread from the coffin and instantly filled the hall, but Su Xinqing didn't seem to be affected. He looked at the coffin with a sneer. Sure enough, there was only one highly decomposed corpse inside. Judging from the sexual characteristics, it should be the corpse of a woman. Do you still want to hide now? My stepfather, Chao Zhongjing. As soon as Su Xinqing's voice fell, a burst of applause came from the back of the hall. I didn't expect that there would be someone who found out that I'm not dead. Your mother will be happy to know. Although I didn't intend to acknowledge that woman as my mother, you still have the nerve to say that after killing her. I've never seen such a shameless person. Su Xinqing turned his head and stared in the direction of the voice. Then, the other party gradually appeared in his field of vision. The man was tall and skinny, wearing a very retro-style suit. His skin, which was exposed outside the suit, looked incomparably pale. When he walked, he was a little wobbly. It was unknown whether he was born with it or if it was caused by his sloppiness. The middle-aged, handsome face that didn't lose to the little fresh meats had a somewhat hearty smile, which made people involuntarily have a good impression of him. With such a good appearance, it was no wonder that he could easily marry Su Xinqing's father. But now, Su Xinqing frowned and looked at the other party for a moment, and then showed some surprise and disgust. You guy, are you not even human? Originally, Su Xinqing thought that Chao Zhongjing, who was behind the scenes, was just faking his death and wanted to secretly control everything. But he didn't expect that the other party might have really died once, but now he returned to the world in a forbidden state. Because there are too many restrictions on humans, for the sake of eternal life and power that surpasses humans, I can only do this. The other party didn't care at all about Su Xinqing's disgust and said frankly, Before we fight, I still have some questions to ask you. Su Shinqing suppressed the urge to punch the other party into pieces and asked coldly, "What are you running away from?" For this, you didn't hesitate to fake your death, sacrifice that woman, and almost killed Chiketsu for this? I don't have the obligation to tell you, young man. Chao Zhongjing seemed to have been poked in his sore spot by Su Shinqing. The leisurely expression on his face disappeared and was replaced by a gloomy and cold expression. Then, how did you become like this? After being rejected by the other party, Su Shinqing continued to ask, "Your current appearance should be an existence between a vampire and a lich, right?" Undead. That's right. The current Chao Zhongjing had become an undead creature that was extremely rare on Earth, with almost eternal life and great power. Vampires aside, in this era, ordinary people couldn't be reincarnated into a lich, which required a lot of power, magic power, spiritual power, and so on. In the age of chaos, modern Earth generally couldn't provide so much. That's because I have a special source of magic power. I've talked too much with you. It's about time to send you on your way. The other party casually gave a perfunctory reply, and then a fierce glint appeared in his eyes. If you found me a little earlier, maybe I wouldn't be a match for you, who could escape from the illusion of the tomb of the three kings before my power stabilized. But now, it's all too late. Su Shinqing curled his lips, and then looked at the time displayed on his phone. It's a little late. If I want to make it in time for lunch, I have to deal with you in about 3 minutes. Chapter 262. Before Su Shinqing's voice had died away, Chao Zhongjing had already turned his hands over. A black cloud appeared out of thin air and headed towards Su Shinqing's head to cover him. It seemed that he intended to take advantage of the fact that Su Shinqing was not ready to launch a sneak attack to finish off the enemy in one fell swoop. In Chao Zhongjing's opinion, although his wife had never mentioned anything special about the child she had with her ex-husband, after all, he was someone who had broken through the illusion of the tomb of the three kings. It was better to be careful and safe. His move was called the poison cloud technique. It was not a technique native to Huaxia, but a technique used by the group of wizards close to Europe. As the name implied, it was an attack method that turned a highly toxic poison into a cloud to envelop the enemy. It was not a novel technique, but it was unexpectedly practical. Moreover, according to his own preparations in advance, the poison cloud he used would be different and would not be easily broken by others. After becoming an undead, he had to prepare for a long time before using the poison cloud technique, but at this moment, he could easily use it. Although he could only use the decaying poison without preparing a highly toxic poison in advance, it was already enough to make Chao Zhongjing, who was resurrected from the dead and fighting for the first time, feel very refreshed. He deeply felt that his decision to get rid of the shackles of the human body was extremely wise. Although the decaying poison was not a fatal poison, it was still one of the most effective poisons. What was more frightening was that this kind of poison did not need to enter the human body through the nasal cavity or mucous membranes. Even a little bit of it on the skin would cause poisoning. In a short time, it would destroy the human body's cells and rot the blood, causing people to begin to rot at a speed visible to the naked eye while they were still alive. It was extremely vicious. The speed of the poison cloud technique was also extremely fast. It was impossible for ordinary people to react in a short time. Even if they could react in time, as long as the whole room was covered with the poison cloud, he could already be regarded as invincible. Just as he was so convinced, a fist broke through the poison cloud and directly punched the upper half of his chest into nothingness. "You're so disgusting, releasing such a smelly thing without saying anything." Su Shinqing, who was unscathed, pulled out his fist. Looking at Chao Zhongjing, whose wounds were healing at a high speed, it was better to say that he was recovering as if time had flowed backward. He shouted unhappily. Chao Zhongjing, who had half of his chest and head blown off, clearly didn't understand what had just happened. He looked at Su Shinqing in confusion. "What are you looking at?" Therefore, Su Shinqing punched Chao Zhongjing's upper body again. He didn't even give Chao Zhongjing the chance to reply. "What's wrong with looking at you?" This time, after Chao Zhongjing was resurrected, he finally reacted and distanced himself from Su Shinqing in horror. However, this was of no use. Whether it was dodging or defending, even if there was a considerable distance between them, Su Shenqing only needed to wave his fist, and Qiao Zhongjing still could not escape the fate of being beaten to a pulp. It's useless. No matter how many times you kill me, I will always be able to revive. So, he simply gave up dodging. After resurrecting again, he shouted at Su Shenqing, I admit that you are very powerful, and I can't even fight back, but it's useless. I will resurrect again, and you will be killed by me after exhausting all your strength. However, he didn't realize that his spirit had begun to become a little abnormal. As a former creature, the pain and despair brought by death destroyed his spirit again and again, causing his self-proclaimed indestructible spirit to gradually collapse. Without the previous shell of wisdom, only hysterical madness was left. Su Shenqing didn't stop because of his words. He continued to give him the gift of death again and again with an expressionless face. It wasn't that Qiao Zhongjing didn't think of using a method of mutual destruction or mutual destruction to cause harm to Su Shenqing, but the gap between the two was so huge that he didn't even have the chance to do so. Are you still not going to say it? The two questions I asked earlier. After a long while, Su Shenqing asked, are you tired and want to stall for time? At this time, Qiao Zhongjing no longer had the appearance of having the pearl of wisdom from before. He looked as miserable as a stray dog, but it's okay. I have personally experienced the beauty of an immortal body. There's no harm in telling you a bit of my life story. Little Zhongjing, do you know why I gave you this name? When Qiao Zhongjing was very young, his grandfather once said to him, being neutral and peaceful is the foundation of being a person. If you are too strong, it is easy to break, and if you are too soft, it is easy to flatter. I hope that you can adjust your mind and be a peaceful and neutral person. At that time, Qiao Zhongjing didn't understand the meaning of his grandfather's words. He was different from his useless brother. He was a proud son of heaven since he was young. He had excellent grades and was good at sports. After graduation, everything went smoothly, and he founded Qiao's company. However, maintaining a company was much more difficult than he imagined. In the business world where the strong preyed on the weak, there was no one left who was weak. It was already Qiao Zhongjing's limit to start from scratch with his drive. After 2 years in the business world of mutual deception, his ambitions in his early years were ground away by setbacks, and Qiao's enterprise began to go downhill. There was even one time when he went abroad to discuss with a partner. He encountered a major setback. The squeezed products couldn't be sold, causing the capital chain to break. Even the entire company was in a precarious situation because of this. It was also at this time that the frustrated Qiao Zhongjing met a few strange people. They claimed to be lower-level members of the Illumination Society. They said that they could provide help to Qiao Zhongjing and help his company get through this crisis. However, Qiao Zhongjing had to become a lower-level member, and after that, Qiao's company had to pay a considerable amount of money to the Illumination Society as a membership fee. At that time, Qiao Zhongjing, who had nowhere else to go, could only bite the bullet and agree to them. It was also at that time that he came into contact with the supernatural power of witchcraft. That kind of supernatural power and the power that was above all living things made him completely lose his peaceful and neutral heart. After understanding how powerful the other party was, Qiao Zhongjing also extinguished any thoughts of resistance. He only secretly collected knowledge about witchcraft in the form of underground antique trading, intending to find a way to escape. After going through ups and downs in the business world for so long, he also understood that many times, if he casually ventured into a field that he shouldn't be in contact with, he would definitely end up in a tragic state. Moreover, although Qiao's company had succeeded in prolonging its life the last time, the increasing membership fee was like a parasite, constantly absorbing the company's liquidity and vitality. If this continued, Qiao's company would soon be on the verge of bankruptcy again. Moreover, this time, the Illumination Society, who had secretly planted many lower-level members in the company, would definitely chew the entire company into pieces and swallow it, instead of sponsoring him to make a comeback like before. At first, I thought that I'd need to lay low for a longer time before I could get that opportunity. After all, The necromancy transformation method that I've found and perfected requires a stable and powerful source of energy. Chao Zhongjing looked at Su Shenxing, who was still expressionless after listening to most of the story, and said, "But I didn't expect the opportunity to come so soon." Chapter 263. It was an afternoon a few months ago when Chiketsu-e picked up a kitten. The kitten was probably sick, so it was abandoned by its owner. However, under the care of Chiketsu-e, the kitten recovered a little. It was also at that time that Chao Zhongjing discovered that kitten's body contained a strange power. Although he was unable to analyze the nature of that power, after experimenting, he discovered that the power had a very strong compatibility. It could be used in almost any kind of witchcraft ritual without any hindrance. However, not long after, the kitten died because of stomatitis. Fortunately, the power did not disappear after its death. This made Chao Zhongjing suspect that the source of the power was not the kitten itself, but something in its body. However, considering that dissecting the kitten's body was likely to cause damage to the source of the power, in the end, he only buried the kitten in the most crucial part of his witchcraft ritual to provide energy for the entire ritual. After solving the most crucial energy problem, Chao Zhongjing began his plan. After the death of the cat in the car accident, the relatives that he implanted a spiritual suggestion and brought him back to the villa's hall and held a long funeral there. The villa's hall was the starting point of the entire witchcraft ritual. Chao Zhongjing came back from the dead and became a powerful undead creature. Next, all he had to do was to quietly move away the more valuable items in his collection and change his appearance slightly. With the power of an undead creature and the spells he had mastered, it would not be difficult for him to return to the peak of his life. However, there was a flaw in the whole plan. The soul of the cat did not disappear after its death. Probably because of its attachment to Chiketsu-e, it helped the girl to block the fatal injury during the car accident and let the girl survive. The girl who survived attracted the attention of Su Shenxing, who noticed that something was wrong and came to investigate. In the end, he discovered the secret of Chao Zhongjing's resurrection. It could be said that from the moment Chiketsu-e came back to life, Chao Zhongjing's plan had already slipped into an unknown direction. "I'm almost done talking. You should give up now, right?" Although Su Shenxing seemed to be at ease, in fact, it was Chao Zhongjing himself who was stalling for time by talking. Only he knew how much damage Su Shenxing's continuous punches had done to his spirit. Therefore, he chose a part of his experience that was not very important and told them everything to stall for time and give himself a chance to breathe. However, Su Shenxing did not make another move after so long, which indeed made him feel a little better. Seeing that Su Shenxing did not move, Chao Zhongjing's immortal body once again inflated his confidence. He thought that as long as he was careful and did not let Su Shenxing catch him off guard like just now, he should be able to dodge his opponent's fist. Just as he was about to make the first move to gain the upper hand, Su Shenxing suddenly looked at him, which made him feel a chill in his heart, and he reflexively took a few steps back. "Is that all?" Su Shenxing asked. "What do you mean?" Chao Zhongjing was stunned. "Oh, then it looks like you've finished talking." Su Shenxing nodded in understanding. "I'm also a person who pays attention to reciprocity. Then I'll also tell you a little bit of good news." As he said this, Su Shenxing took a step forward. Chao Zhongjing subconsciously took a few steps back, directly pressing his back against the wall, his whole body pressed against it. Immediately, he became angry out of humiliation. He had an immortal body. What was there to be afraid of? Everything has a cause and effect. The so-called immortal body naturally cannot escape this category. Su Shenxing completely ignored his expression, but slowly raised his fist and said, "If you obtain an immortal body because of medicine, then destroy the effect of that medicine. If you obtain an immortal body because of a treasure, then destroy that treasure together with it. If you obtain an immortal body from birth, then wipe out the fact that this thing was born. My fist is a fist that can shatter karma." His tone was not boasting, nor was there any threat in his tone. He was simply stating a fact. But it was precisely this that made Chao Zhongjing feel even more terrified. For something like an immortal body, The number of people who have died under my fist and sword is almost enough to form a company. You? What exactly are you Chao Zhongjing hysterically roared. A normal person. As he said this, Su Xinxing swung his fist towards the other party. As long as this punch landed, Chao Zhongjing would probably disappear along with the small cat's corpse that was his soul box. But the moment he touched the other party, Chao Zhongjing's body turned into snow-white ashes and scattered all over the ground. It was not destroyed by Su Xinxing's fist, but at that moment, Chao Zhongjing's soul was pulled out of this body and transferred to another body that he had prepared beforehand. TSK, pretty smart. Su Xinxing raised his eyebrows. But this was of no use. As soon as he came in, the entire villa was already enveloped in the protection of the sacred land. And under Su Xinxing's instructions, the protection of the sacred land was gradually shrinking. Chao Zhongjing could no longer escape. Are you kidding me? How could there be such a monster in this world? Chao Zhongjing, who broke through the wall of a sculpture, tried to adapt to his new body while running to the courtyard. There was no chance of winning against the other party, so he could only think of a way to escape. But as an existence similar to a lich, he could not leave his soul box too far away. Before escaping, he had to dig out the small cat's corpse that was the soul box. I remember that it was buried here. The place where the small cat's corpse was buried was under the hibiscus tree in the courtyard. Chao Zhongjing's hands desperately dug up the wet soil, wanting to dig out the small cat's corpse, but he unexpectedly dug up something else. It was a metal cookie box covered in mud and looked quite old. Unfortunately, the cookie factory of this brand had closed down a few years ago. Chao Zhongjing recognized this box. It was a time capsule that he buried when he was young. Once upon a time, this villa did not exist, and there was a small building here. That was the house of Chao Zhongjing's grandfather. When he was young, Chao Zhongjing did not live with his parents who were busy making money, but lived with his grandfather. Even the name was given by his grandfather. When he was about 10 years old, his grandfather asked him and his brother, Chao Go, to write down their future wishes and then bury them under the tree. They would dig it out when they grew up. But he did not expect to dig it out at this time. Now was not the time to look at it. The most important thing was to find the soul box quickly and then leave this place. Although he knew in his heart, Chao Zhongjing unconsciously twisted open the lid of the cookie box and saw the yellowed paper inside. To me, after I grew up, did you become a useful adult? Not the kind of adult who can make a lot of money, or rather it would be no different from my parents who abandoned me. But an adult who is useful to others, who can help others, who is relied on by others, who is respected by others. I think that kind of person can be considered as powerful. After I grew up, could you smile every day? I like smiles, whether it is others or my own. I like them all. Grandpa said that a smile is a bridge that transcends language and can allow people to communicate with each other. To be honest, I don't know much about this, but I think that if you can smile every day, you must be very happy, just like me now. After I grew up, did you find someone who can accompany you for the rest of your life? Well, actually, this is just to make up the word count because Grandpa said that I must write at least 500 words. Yesterday, I just happened to see a TV show like this, so I wrote it down. Wife. To be able to be together forever, to understand each other, to not be separated no matter what, to protect her even at the cost of his life. That should be how people like that should be called, right? Did I find someone like that in the future? If only I could find someone like that. Also, if I have children, I hope to have a daughter, because that would be cuter, right? In the end, after I grew up, did you become an indomitable, upright man? Just like Grandpa, you will not be defeated by difficulties, no matter what. You will be able to stand straight and accept the blows of fate. You will not give in. You will not give up. You will bravely move forward for your dreams and future. That is my dream. Yes. If it is realized, don't be shy. Applaud yourself. If it is not, don't give up. I am cheering for you now. Chao Zhongjing, written on 19XX, XX month, XX day. Chao Zhongjing felt that his hands were a little stiff. There was also a piece of the same yellowed paper in the biscuit box. He shakily picked up the paper and found that it was a few words written by his late grandpa. Be peaceful and upright. Don't forget your original intention. He trembled even more. Although there was no physiological activity, he felt that his chest was stuffy and uncomfortable. Not running anymore? The monster-like young man had slowly walked behind him without him knowing. But Chao Zhongjing had no intention of running away. I once had everything. At this moment, he wanted to cry, but the tear ducts of this body had already stopped working. He could only murmur with a trembling voice, but I destroyed them all with my own hands. In this world, once you do something, you can't go back. Su Xinxing was silent for a moment, and then slowly said, Does a monster like you also have regrets? Chao Zhongjing asked. Too many to count. Su Xinxing replied with a wry smile. So that's how it is, power can't give you everything. So, I've been wrong all this time, and I've been so wrong. When I'm staring at one thing, I'll ignore everything around me. Chao Zhongjing lay on the ground, closed his eyes, and had a relieved expression on his face. The soul box is under the hibiscus tree. You can do it. This time, Su Xinxing didn't hesitate and raised his right hand. After dealing with the body, Su Xinxing looked at the gem-like thing in his hand. It was dug out from the place where the soul box was buried. Although it looked strangely familiar, Su Xinxing couldn't remember where he had seen this thing before. Forget it. Since you're staying here, I'll use this thing to make a necklace for Chiketsu in 2 days. Su Xinxing shrugged and looked at the shadow floating beside him. I think she'll be happy to return to her side as a guardian spirit. Although that girl is just a normal human, she can't see you. Meow, the shadow let out a small meow. It's finally over. Let's go home and eat. Su Xinxing's face showed a big smile and stretched. It hasn't been long, but I feel like I've been hungry for a week.
Meow.
Chapter 264. In the quiet dimensional sea, a spaceship-like dimensional ship was suspended in it. From the paint of the hull, it could be vaguely seen that this was also a dimensional ship from the Space Administration, but compared to the one from Lux, it was larger and more luxurious. In addition, the huge badge located on the back deck of the bridge and the number 7 on the badge that was commonly used in tens of thousands of universes were even more eye-catching. If it was a race that could enter and exit the multidimensional universe, they could basically understand the meaning of this badge. There were millions of deacons in the Space Administration, but the most outstanding 10 of them would be granted the title of a seat and have the right to represent the Space Administration. They would be respectfully called the executors of the Space Administration. The dimensional ship in front of them was the ship of the 7th executor, the Violet, free translation. It was just that although at first glance, one would subconsciously marvel at the magnificence of this dimensional ship, upon closer inspection, one would find that it was not in good condition. Scars could be seen everywhere, almost covering the entire dimensional ship. There were countless exposed circuit breaks. If it wasn't in the dimensional sea where normal matter couldn't exist, there would probably be black smoke and other things coming out. Code UK 004 signal has been lost. Your Excellency, we can't continue to track it. In the bridge, a slightly rigid mechanical voice sounded. It escaped again. The girl sitting on the captain's chair frowned, and her heroic temperament could not hide the strong tiredness on her face. But even so, there was no intention of retreating because of the difficulties in her eyes. Based on the current situation, I suggest that you return to the Space Administration first, perform maintenance on the ship, and upload the information of UK 004 to the headquarters terminal. If it weren't for the failure of the Violet's upload circuit, the girl muttered, and then did not hesitate to reject the shipboard AI's proposal. We don't have time to return. I have chased that guy for 1,300 standard years. No one knows its harm better than I do. Even if it is left alone for a short period of time, it will evolve into a superdimensional disaster that even the Space Administration is helpless against. But Your Excellency, we have lost the signal of UK 004, and there is no way to continue tracking it at present. According to the past situation, it is most likely hiding in a nearby world. No, in the worst case, that guy may have evolved the ability to block the detection of the Space Administration. The girl bit her nails and thought for a moment, then looked up and asked, "Violet, which world is the closest to us in terms of information volume now?" "It's an unconfirmed world. Please wait a moment. The detection circuit just detected some information about this world. It seems that a deacon has been to this world before. The planet with the largest amount of information in this world has also been marked." "Oh, I'm really lucky. When I return to the Space Administration in the future, I'll have to thank that administrator properly." In short, UK-004 is also a creature that is very sensitive to information. He will definitely appear on the planet with the most information in the world. After a while, the somewhat rigid voice continued to speak. "That is a planet, Earth. Do you need me to repeat the detection of its information volume? Since the other party has marked it as undetectable, it means that the information volume is likely to exceed the detection limit of the general dimensional ship's mainframe. You should stop all the secondary programs, empty the calculation volume, and then perform the detection." The girl thought for a while, then said, "Understood. Detection in progress." After a while, black smoke began to rise from the control panel of the bridge, and electric sparks crackled from time to time. "What's going on?" the girl asked in surprise, as it was the first time she had seen such a situation. "The detection value has exceeded the upper limit. Warning, the detection value has exceeded the upper limit." The girl opened her mouth wide in surprise. As the seventh executor, the performance of her dimensional ship's mainframe computer was heaven and earth compared with that of the general deacon. It was precisely because of this that she could carry and use the detection of thousands of worlds at a time. But now, she couldn't even detect a planet in an ordinary world? Just how much information did that planet contain? Could it be some planet with high-energy radiation, and the intelligent creatures on it have developed a supernatural civilization? But that's not right. Even if it's a level 3 civilization in a high-energy world, the information volume shouldn't be so large. Although she was full of doubts, the girl did not continue to sit still. Instead, she forcibly interrupted the mainframe computer's suicidal behavior through manual safety. "Violet, you wait in the upper airspace. I'll go to that world to take a look." According to UK-004's risk assessment, I don't recommend you to do this kind of illegal operation. It's because it's dangerous that I have to go. How many civilizations do you think I've seen that guy destroy in the past 1,300 years? The girl sighed. "This is an order. Violet, send me to that Earth. Since it's your will, I will obey." I think I stepped on some strange bug." Su Xinqing lifted his foot with a face of disgust. He looked at the pool of green mucus under his shoe and the strange creature that looked like a mutated lobster. He couldn't help but have a headache. "I already have a lot of things to worry about today. Now I have to go home and wash my shoes that were dirted by this disgusting thing. Spare me." After solving the problem with Chiketsu's family, Su Xinqing had a peaceful life, but this peaceful life didn't last long. A week later, it would be Jiangjin University's anniversary celebration. It was said that it was an event similar to Fuso Animation High School's festival. To be honest, because last year's anniversary celebration, Su Xinqing took Mo Li to play Star Wars and Centaurus, so he wasn't too sure what it was like. But this year, his classmates didn't seem to want to let him go. He didn't know when they discussed it, but when they voted for the anniversary celebration, they unanimously voted for made coffee. Actually, this wasn't a big deal. The problem was that Su Xinqing chose a major that had too many males and too few females. There were only 3 females in his class. Either you dress as a woman yourself, or you let your younger sisters thus be your maid. Choose one. When the 4-eyed class monitor patted him on the shoulder and said that earnestly, Su Xinqing almost couldn't help but stuff his glasses into the other party's skull. Su Xinqing could more or less guess the cause of this matter. After all, there were too many monks and too little gruel in their department. In the end, not only did Su Xinqing have a beautiful sister, Mo Li, he also had an unclear relationship with Song Yu. Last semester, the mysterious witch, Asahi Sakurakanji, also came to school to find him. Su Xinqing guessed that if these guys had the chance, they would probably bury him in a small mound in the back of the mountain. Not long ago, Chiketsu came to school to find him because he didn't bring his apartment keys. Su Shinshing could only honestly say, "This is my other sister." Then the next day, Chihaya Fukuyama was the one who didn't bring his keys. Su Shinshing could only use "this is my cousin" to get away with it. Originally, he thought that there was no one else in his apartment, so he could be at ease. But on the third day, the one who came to find him was a lowly. Su Shinshing felt that it was already amazing that the group of male compatriots who were crying bloody tears and complaining about the unfairness of fate could endure until now and not treat him as an Aruba. Anyway, he sighed again. Because of the psychological trauma in his past, he couldn't dress as a female. Then what he had to do was very clear. How should I persuade them to come to school to be maids? Chapter 265. Su Shinshing dragged his tired, mainly psychological, body back to Sakura apartment. For the sake of his own mental health, Su Shinshing decided to try his best to persuade the residents in the apartment to wear maid outfits and join his classes, maid cafe. The first one to bear the brunt was naturally Emoli, who in a sense was of the same mind as him. Emoli, maid outfits. Cinnamon sausages, 5 servings. Deal. Su Shinshing gave Emoli a thumbs up. Very good, opening the door for one person. That's why I like foodies the most. Su Shinshing said silently in his mind. What are you guys doing there? Chihaya Fukuyama, who watched the whole process from the side, didn't know what to say. Chihaya-sama, would you like more tea? Asahi Sakura Kanji, who was holding a teapot, walked over from the kitchen. Su Shinshing looked around and found that other than Emoli, there were only 2 people in the living room who were drinking tea. It seemed like a good opportunity to persuade him. Su Shinshing cleared his throat and asked Chihaya Fukuyama, excuse me, do you have anyone who would like to wear a maid's uniform? No, get out. He was mercilessly rejected. As a result, Su Shinshing's entire body fell forward in defeat in front of Jasmine. The little girl was still expressionless or calm. She gently stroked the back of Su Shinshing's head and said softly, like she was comforting a child, "Mr. Landlord, don't be discouraged." Although Su Shinshing already knew that Chihaya Fukuyama was definitely an impenetrable fortress, he didn't expect it to be this strong. She didn't even listen to reason and rejected him without hesitation. As for Asahi Sakura Kanji, although she had a rotten smell that even Su Shinshing had to avoid, her personality was still weak. As long as he could persuade Chihaya Fukuyama, Asahi Sakura Kanji wouldn't be able to escape. "Mr. Landlord, your expression is the same as the villain." While Su Shinshing was thinking, Emoli ridiculed him as usual. But these words were selectively ignored by Su Shinshing. Chihaya-chan has been in Gyeongjin for a while, right? Su Shinshing pretended to talk as if nothing happened. But the rash conversation just now had already caused the other party to build a wall in her heart. She was obviously on guard against Su Shinshing. Chihaya Fukuyama showed an expression that seemed to even have goosebumps. "I'm not familiar with you. Please don't call me Chan." Su Shinshing's perfect business-like smile seemed to have some cracks, but he didn't shrink back because of this. Instead, he continued to face the difficulties. "Is there anything you want?" As a human, he definitely had his own desires. As long as he had desires, he could naturally use them as a base to attack. Chihaya Fukuyama thought for a moment and then answered. "A BMW X Series car and a house in the city center with an area of at least 100 square meters. A car, 200,000 to 2 million. A house, 700,000 to 2 million. Su Shinshing's net worth, 1,000. Su Shinshing was defeated for the second time. "You're too realistic." Our hero cried and beat the ground with tears of blood. A man's value lies in how much money he can make. Chihaya Fukuyama, who had been distressed by family expenses and budgets, in a sense, was the closest to an ordinary person in the entire Sakura apartments. Shut up. If you do that, the meaning of the existence of the main character will be completely denied. Well, although I don't disagree with Chihaya-sama's values, but if you do that, isn't Mr. Su too pitiful? Asahi Sakura Kanji scratched his face, seeming to feel sorry for Su Shinshing's miserable situation. "Although I know, Asahi, you have good intentions, Don't you realize that what you said is more hurtful? Chihaya Fukuyama sighed and reminded him. Because if he thought about it carefully, Asahi Sakura Kanji was simply saying that Su Xinxing was synonymous with poverty. Although it was not wrong to say that if they were to compete in the word poverty, the only person who could win against Su Xinxing was probably a vampire who had been poor for hundreds of thousands of years. That's not what I meant. After being criticized by Chihaya Fukuyama, Asahi Sakura Kanji also felt that his words were inappropriate, and he hurriedly said, Mr. Su, I'm not saying that you're so poor that you don't even have any value. I just think that you don't have much money, and you don't play a role in supporting an ordinary family. Ahem, Su Xinxing almost coughed up blood. Is this a King comfort or a stab to the heart? Also, I don't have money purely because I'm still in school. Even my living expenses are earned by working. Speaking of which, there are obviously a lot of people living in Sakura apartments, but other than Qin Xingyan, no one pays the rent. Landlord. Emily grinned, revealing his small canine teeth, and deliberately used a cheerful tone to give Su Xinxing a thumbs up and said, Don't mind. Don't mind. No, I mind a lot. Su Xinxing muttered in his heart. In short, as rent, can't you wear a maid outfit once? He didn't give up and asked Chihaya Fukuyama, Just one day. Just one day. Regardless, you have to at least explain the ins and outs of the matter to me, right? Chizeo Shinshan was also defeated by Su Xinxing's indomitable momentum, which was more like a thick-skinned momentum. She could only ask helplessly. Su Xinxing hesitated for a while, and in the end, he could only tell him the humiliating agreement he made with the boys. Chihaya Fukuyama didn't interrupt and listened to Su Xinxing's description. In the end, he said with a smirk on his face, Now that you mention it, I think it's good for you to wear a girl's outfit. Before Su Xinxing could say anything, Emily fell off the sofa with a thud. Miss Emily, what's wrong? Asahi Sakura Kanji hurriedly went to help her. It's too scary. Emily, who is usually expressionless, held her head and shivered. The tragedy that happened in Centaurus seemed to have resurfaced in her mind. However, Chihaya Fukuyama and Asahi Sakura Kanji, who didn't experience that disaster, were confused. That's impossible. Su Xinxing's face was serious. I'm not joking. If I do that, the world will be in danger of being destroyed. Wait a minute. The world will be destroyed because of a person wearing a girl's outfit. That's too tragic. In the end, although they didn't understand the reason, they were intimidated by Su Xinxing and Mo Li's imposing manner and agreed to the maid outfit request. Su Xinxing's gaze also turned to the other residents of Sakura apartment. Chapter 266. Where's Chiketsu? Su Xinxing asked Chihaya Fukuyama. After gaining the support of the Demon King, Fusang deity, and her maid, he had become very confident. He looked back and did not see Chiketsu. Perhaps it was because of the sudden loss of a close relative. Chiketsu had been clinging to Su Xinxing ever since he learned of his half-brother's existence. However, Emily despised Su Xinxing when he said proudly that he did not dote on his sister in vain. Although Su Xinxing had always emphasized that Sakura Apartments was just an ordinary old apartment, the fact was that there was a protection of the Holy Land outside the apartment. The inside of the apartment itself had an incredible atmosphere. In the past, Su Xinxing often brought some supernatural creatures into Sakura Apartments, intending to observe them for a while before deciding whether to let them out or get rid of them. Over time, there were many things in the apartment that ordinary people could not see. To avoid scaring Chiketsu, who was still an ordinary person, Su Xinxing had been busy teaching and warning a lot of supernatural creatures during this period. He barely managed to hide it from the little girl. After Chiyoyu calmed down, Su Xinxing used his connections, physics, to transfer Chiyoyu to Jasmine's school. It was a pity that Chiyoyu couldn't be in the same class as Jasmine because her grade was one level lower than Jasmine's. However, it was very close to Sakura's apartment, and with Jasmine there, Chiyoyu could at least take care of her. Well, judging from Jasmine's personality, perhaps Chiyoyu could take care of her instead. Chiketsu seems to have gone shopping with Miss Chin. Asahi Sakura Kanji picked up the small teapot and asked, Mr. Landlord, do you want more tea? Then I'll help myself. Su Shinshing watched Asahi Sakura Kanji pour the amber tea into the teacup and asked, Is there anyone else in the apartment besides you? Miss Song is preparing dinner in the kitchen now. Oh, is that so? Su Shinshing drank the hot tea in one gulp, stuck out his tongue, and put the teacup on the coffee table. Sorry, I have to leave for a while. Mo Lee, who was immersed in the anime, just waved his hand. Chihaya Fukuyama seemed to be regretting that he had agreed to Su Shinshing's request so easily. Only Asahi Sakura Kanji nodded at Su Shinshing with a warm smile. When he came to the kitchen door, Su Shinshing could already hear Song's muttering. Scrambled eggs with chives, pine nuts, and corn. It seemed like she was talking about the dinner recipe. Su Shinshing touched his chin. It seemed like tonight's dinner was quite simple, but Songyu's cooking was still worth looking forward to. Sure enough, he let Songyu be in charge of the food in Sakura apartment. Goji yam puree, garlic roasted light tea, mutton sea cucumber soup, pig kidney. This is a bit too much, right? Forget it. Since I've already bought it, I'll just put it in the soup. It seemed like she was talking about the aphrodisiac recipe. Taking back his words, it seemed like she was still worried. Does this girl think I'm an aphrodisiac? Su Shinshing knocked on the kitchen door with a head full of black lines. Who is it? I'm busy. Songyu, who was wearing an apron, opened the door and saw Su Shinshing. She couldn't help but be stunned. Then her eyes wandered somewhat guiltily, and she said in a voice that gave people a sense of concealment, What's the matter? What's the matter? Although he really wanted to complain about the full menu that could be called aphrodisiac for an hour, Su Shinshing thought about it and felt that the matter related to his safety, female, clothing was more important, so he forced a horrified smile and was about to say something. Is your face cramping? But Songyu was one step ahead of him. No, don't mind it. Su Shinshing rubbed his somewhat stiff face and returned to his usual expression. Let me ask, Songyu, do you dislike maids? Do you like maids? A suspicious blush appeared on Songyu's face, and she seemed to be a little shy. She said in a weak mosquito voice, I don't really dislike it if you must. Then Songyu, do you dislike maids when receiving guests? Su Shinshing didn't pay attention to the other's following words, but after confirming that Songyu didn't dislike maids, he asked with great interest. Do you like maids? Songyu's face suddenly became pale, as if all the blood had disappeared. No, I can't. This kind of thing, no matter what, it's... Although he didn't know what she was referring to, even someone like Su Shinshing, who had a low EQ, could understand that the other party seemed to have made a mistake. He quickly explained the whole thing, which made Songyu calm down. In that case, can't you say it clearly earlier? Songyu patted her rather large chest. You scared me to death. Then about maids. Su Shinshing asked Songyu like a henchman often seen in TV dramas. It's not impossible. Songyu's index finger touched her chin and thought for a moment. But I have conditions. Old madam, please speak, Su Shinshing said submissively. After this, accompany me to go shopping, Songyu said without hesitation. Why does this request feel so déjà vu? Su Shinshing muttered to himself. Then do you agree or not? Of course I agree. This is a must. After all, it was just shopping. Su Shinshing, who rode a little sheep back and forth in Jiangjin every day, expressed that he didn't care at all. This was a small alley between the skyscrapers of Jiangjin City. A figure fell from the sky with a bang and fell onto a pile of black garbage bags, scaring a few stray cats that were searching for food. After a while, a figure wearing something similar to a spacesuit, but looked like a child with short arms and legs, subtly and somewhat funny, climbed out of the garbage bags. The information frequency modulation is complete. I can finally enter this world. Oh, the air quality here is extremely poor, and it's filled with a foul smell. It's hard to believe that this is the location of a level 3 civilization. But judging from the composition of the atmosphere, it's still possible to survive. After taking off her helmet, The girl took a deep breath, and then her whole face turned purple. Wah, it stinks. After thinking for a while, she put on her helmet again, then turned around and rummaged through the garbage bags for a moment before pulling out an antique suitcase. Interestingly, although this suitcase looked about the size of a briefcase and had a very funny patch on the front, when she opened it and flattened it, she found that it was not the inside of the suitcase, but a pitch-black staircase that led to the bottom. The girl walked in without hesitation. After a while, she came out, but at this time, she was holding something that looked like a compass in her hand. I didn't think that there would be a time when I would need this. The girl sighed. The serial number of the object in her hand was UK 091, tentatively named the Compass of Misfortune. Free translation. The girl found it in the ruins of a civilization. No matter where the holder wanted to go or what they were looking for, as long as they made a wish, UK 091 would point them in the right direction. For example, if they made a wish like, "I want the most precious treasure in the world," it would guide the holder to a raw stone that surpassed the largest gem in existence. However, there was a price to pay for using this thing. Depending on the place or the thing they were looking for, UK 091 would give them a corresponding misfortune. A large part of the reason why the civilization that the girl saw was destroyed was because of the excessive use of UK 091. Now, please find the location of UK 004 for me. Chapter 267. After the girl finished speaking, the spoon-shaped needle on the compass of misfortune began to spin faster and faster. In the end, the entire compass shook slightly. After 3 or 4 minutes, the spoon-shaped needle began to slow down. However, after waiting for a long time, the needle did not really stop. Instead, it kept shaking in a range. It seemed that there was no way to identify the direction in more detail. Seeing this situation, the girl could not help but frown and show a serious expression. There were generally 2 possibilities for this situation with the compass of misfortune. The first was that it was interfered with by another UK. However, although UK 004 was one of the most dangerous UK, it did not have the ability to interfere with the compass of misfortune. The other possibility was that UK 004 had parasitized the world's most information-rich thing and evolved because it had obtained enough information, so it could affect the compass of misfortune. If it was the first possibility, it would be fine. However, if it was the second possibility, then things would be troublesome. This is not good. As a mistake made when she was young, the girl had used the compass of misfortune many times. Therefore, she never had any expectations for her luck. Although things like UK were not a secret in the Space Administration, even including the datum world, among the hundreds of thousands of worlds directly under the jurisdiction of the Space Administration, there were only less than 3 digits of UKs. Every time a UK appeared, it would be stored as quickly and tightly as possible. Therefore, most of the members of the Space Administration thought that UK was just like an urban legend. After the girl took over as the 7th executor, she was ordered to go to the 3rd type of world, which was to manage the recovery of UKs from the outer world. The number of outer worlds under their jurisdiction was much more than the number of sovereign worlds under the direct management of the Space Administration. Many of the outer worlds were as vast as the universe where Earth was located. If it wasn't for the fact that the UK's information signature was very obvious, and the fact that the Violet was equipped with the latest technology of the Space Administration 3,000 years ago, the girl might not have been found even if she spent tens of thousands of years. UK was an abbreviation, and the full name was unknown. Of course, because the datum world where the Space Administration was located was not English, this was also a free translation after entering the Earth. Everyone just needed to understand the meaning. Unknown, the body is unknown. Among the known UKs, some were objects, some were creatures, and some were even abstract concepts, such as diseases. Even the Space Administration did not have a reliable answer as to how UK was created. But what was certain was that the UK would not be born in a place where the information variable was less than or equal to the operating rules of the world. The UK would only be born in a place where the amount of information was far greater than the natural environment. In other words, they would inevitably appear beside intelligent creatures. For example, if a UK was born in the solar system where the Earth was located, then it was very likely that it would appear among the people on the Earth and not in the empty space of the universe. Regardless of that, most of the UKs were not safe. Almost all UKs were intrinsically a tangled, distorted, and indecipherable information tumor. Not only that, they could also affect the information of things they came into contact with, causing incomprehensible information proliferation and explosion, ultimately leading to all sorts of undesirable outcomes. Until now, the girl had seen quite a few civilizations destroyed by UKs. In any case, he should find UK 00 for as soon as possible. With that thought in mind, the girl stuffed the compass into the chest of her spacesuit. She was about to leave the alley and head in the general direction that the compass needle was pointing. As soon as she walked to the entrance of the alley, she saw a blue and white police car drifting and stopping at the entrance of the alley. Then, a young man in a police uniform walked out, but for some reason, his legs seemed to be trembling. "Hello," he said to the girl, but when he saw that the girl did not respond, he tried to change his language. "Hello? Oh, hello? Bonjour, French? Ciao, Italian? Hello? F***ck. This won't work. Well, hello from Korea. You should say it like this." "Well, wait a minute." The girl interrupted him. "I can understand you." Although it took some time to sample and analyze the world or the common language of this area, the technology of the Space Administration had always been trustworthy. Oh. That's good. To be honest, after graduation, I even returned English to my teacher. The other party showed a grateful smile. When I was talking about other languages, I was afraid that you would answer, so I threw out a bunch of foreign languages. The girl showed a puzzled look. She could not understand what the other party was trying to say. Although the girl's expression could not be seen because of the hood, her confused emotions seemed to have been conveyed. The other party did not continue to talk nonsense. Instead, he said seriously, "Since you can understand me, then I won't beat around the bush. Are you a monster or a warlock?" After asking the Violet's AI to inquire about the two words monster and warlock through telepathy, the girl's feedback was basically mythical novels and the like. She could not help but become even more confused. "Did you make a mistake?" Seeing the girl's look, the other party was also a little shaken. The new equipment detected energy fluctuations here not long ago. "You made a mistake." So the girl simply went with the flow and said, "Your words are persuasive." The other party looked at the girl's clothes, which looked like a spacesuit no matter how you looked at it, and said awkwardly, "It's not persuasive at all, okay?" As soon as the voice trailed off, the girl's clothes turned into a common casual style, and even the logo on it was vivid. "It's too late to change now, hey." The other party covered his forehead and looked like he was having a toothache. "Anyway, come with me to the police station first." At this time, the girl had already connected to the Earth's network through the nano-computer built into her brain. Then she did as the Romans did, and after Baidu the police station, she decided to go with the other party. First of all, the bracelet on the young man's wrist had a mysterious power that even the Violet's AI could not analyze. Obviously, the other party was not an ordinary native of this world, and it was not in line with the style of the Space Administration. Second of all, she might be able to find some useful information at the police station. After entering the police car, the other party suddenly said, "By the way, I haven't introduced myself yet. My name is Xiao Jingyi."
Ing.
The girl's answer was concise. Xiao Jingyi muttered something, and then reluctantly started the car engine. As a result, the car's audio system suddenly lit up, and then a cheerful voice said, "Hey, boy, you're finally back. Let's drive on the road at 180 miles per hour. It's going to cause trouble for the traffic police. Be more like it." Xiao Jingyi, who used to be an experienced driver, said tiredly, "Can't you just drive properly? It's rare that I found a way to use the drainage canal to drive around the bend. We don't have 5 consecutive hairpin bends here. And I don't plan to race with others." Xiao Jingyi sighed. "Why are you guys always so worrisome?" Looking at the car's audio system that was quarreling with Xiao Jingyi, the girl's eyes widened in surprise, as if she had seen something unbelievable. "This is an unconfirmed UK?" Chapter 268. For the time being, let's shift our focus from the unlucky criminal police officer and the equally unlucky visitor from another world who, in a sense, could also be considered a police officer, back to the protagonist. After successfully persuading Song-yu, Su Shinching naturally planned to drag the other two residents of Sakura Apartments down with him. Although Chiketsu was a little embarrassed to do this, Su Shinching was her brother after all, so he should teach the girl about the sinister hearts of this world. That's true, but where did the two of them go? Su Shinching asked Song-yu. I think they went to the supermarket. I don't know why, but Qin Xingyin shook her head with a wry smile when she saw the ingredients I prepared. Chiketsu also followed her out at that time. Song-yu answered casually. Ah, so that's why. Su Shinching glanced at the things in the kitchen. Admittedly, Song-yu's cooking was pretty good, and chives and eggs were considered common dishes, but the other things were subtly a little too heavy for the average girl, or rather, the wolfberry yam puree, mutton sea cucumber, and pig kidney soup weren't for the average person's taste buds at all. For this reason, it was understandable that Qin Xingyan went out to buy some other ingredients. In this respect, the cultivator girl was probably the most normal person in the entire Sakura Apartments, or rather, as expected of Xingyan a dream. She could already fast for a short period of time, so not eating or drinking for a few days was nothing to her, but she still went out to buy ingredients for the safety of everyone in the apartment. All in all, it didn't seem like they went too far. There were only a few supermarkets nearby, so they probably wouldn't miss it if they kept an eye out on the road. So Su Shinching planned to go out and directly tell them about the maid outfits and pick them up while he was at it. Emily, I'm going out for a bit. Do you want to come with me? I refuse. Accompanied by the words Bala Zero Energy, Wukaraka, Magic Transformation, from the TV, Emily's reply was as concise and clear as ever. Since Emily was so obsessed with animation, Su Shinching could only go out on his own. Mr. Su, will you pass by the express delivery when you go out? Sakura Kanji suddenly asked. Oh, it's on the way, right? What's wrong? Su Shinching asked curiously. If it's convenient for you, please help me with the package inside, Miss Witch said with a hopeful look on her face, but then her expression turned serious again. Also, if possible, please try not to open the package outside. Are those your personal belongings? Su Shinching could understand this. It seemed that most girls didn't want their personal belongings, such as underwear and some small cosmetics, to be seen by strange men. No, it's nothing to me, but if you open it outside. Miss Witch's expression became even more serious. My words? Su Shinching looked puzzled. Could it be some kind of dangerous item? However, with Su Shinching's current strength, let alone a bomb package, even if it was wrapped in a miniature nuclear bomb, it probably wouldn't have any effect on him. Thinking about it this way, there was probably nothing in the world that Su Shinching didn't dare to take, right? Even if it was seafood, as long as he didn't eat it, it shouldn't be a problem. If you open it outside and it's seen by others, you'll be in danger of being mistaken for a gay man. Well, it seemed that there were still things in this world that could make Su Shinching feel fear from the bottom of his heart. So, what do you want me to bring back? At this moment, Su Shinching suddenly had a feeling that he was inviting a wolf into the house by letting Sakura Kokoro Asahi live in Sakura Apartment. In short, after suffering a sudden mental blow, Su Shinching walked out of the apartment in a daze. Fortunately, his years of poverty made him remember to close the door after he left. After asking his ghosts that had returned from their travels around the world to look for Jiangyu and the others, Su Shinching was just about to leave the courtyard when he felt a light tugging at the hem of his clothes. Su Shinching subconsciously looked back and found that Jiangyu, whom he hadn't seen for a long time, had appeared behind him. Jiangyu, has your body recovered? Su Shinching was pleasantly surprised. Ever since her head pierced through Lux's dimensional ship, Jiangyu had disappeared due to a certain degree of injury, and it seemed that she hadn't recovered. Even when Su Shinching and the others deliberately went to the museum to look at River Moon, they couldn't see the girl. He didn't expect her to appear now. However, when he took a closer look, he found that the girl's body was still a little translucent, and it seemed that she hadn't fully recovered. Coffee shop. I want to go too. She held onto Su Xinqing's clothes with one hand, lowered her head, and said softly, as if she was a little shy. It seemed that when he explained the situation to Song Yu or Chihaya Fukuyama, this girl also heard it. Because Jiang Yu's presence was weak, and no one noticed her wandering around Sakura Apartments for a long time, Su Xinqing quickly accepted it. I'm fine. It's better to say that the more people there are, the better. But is your body okay now? Su Xinqing asked with concern. At that time one day should be fine, the girl replied softly. Is that so? Su Xinqing vaguely understood. The girl had probably recovered her ability to move for some time, but just like before, no one could see her, so naturally, no one could communicate with her. If it was in the past, Jiang Yu was already used to being alone, so it didn't matter. However, after moving around with the people of Sakura Apartment and experiencing the lively and happy atmosphere, suddenly returning to the situation of being alone naturally made Jiang Yu feel even more lonely. So, even though Jiang Yu was the shy type, she still took the initiative to show up, hoping to become a member of the maid coffee shop. After understanding this, Su Xinqing naturally held onto the girl's hand. Then, under the girl's confused gaze, he smiled and said, I feel too lonely looking for Xingyan and Chiketsu on my own. Jiang Yu, why don't you come with us? As a result, the girl's shy expression turned into a bright smile. She nodded her head vigorously and held onto Su Xinqing's hand tightly. In the afternoon, the sun had already begun to set in the west, spreading a warm and gentle light. Just like that, the two of them slowly walked out of the courtyard as if they were taking a stroll. Their shadows were also drawn out under the sunlight, and then gradually merged together. Speaking of which, I still need to get Asahi the BL reader I bought from the Mike Market. Chapter 269. UK? What's that? Is it a type of Uma? Xiao Jingyi tried his best to control the steering wheel so that the police car wouldn't cause too much trouble for the others. At the same time, he also took the time to talk to the girl he just found, who claimed to be Ying. Although the girl's face couldn't be seen, at least from her voice, she should be a girl. Have you never seen Death God Fu or Ordinary Monsters? Death God Fu? The girl obviously couldn't understand the term Xiao Jingyi said. After repeating it once, she fell silent. That's right. Judging from your equipment, it's more reasonable to say that you're a technological being like a person from the future or an alien, although I've never seen those kinds of people. Xiao Jingyi sighed and said casually. Because there were always some messy things happening in Jiangjin every day. When he first took over as the director of the super administrative office, he was often shocked or panicked. But after being shocked and panicked every day, he got used to it over time. Now that he encountered supernatural emergencies, not only was he able to remain calm and collected, but as long as the situation wasn't life-threatening, he was even in the mood to play a game of Gwent first. The so-called Death God Fu refers to things like items that have been left for too long, and thus, it absorbs the essence of heaven and earth, accumulates resentment, or feels Buddha nature and spiritual power, and thus obtains a soul and turns into a monster. The girl didn't wait for Xiao Jingyi to finish his sentence and finished what he wanted to say. Don't you know it very well? Xiao Jingyi narrowed his eyes and looked at the other party through the rearview mirror. Unfortunately, the other party's mask still faithfully covered its owner's appearance, so Xiao Jingyi couldn't see the other party's expression. Death God Fu is in the UK I'm talking about. In my travels, although it's rare, I've seen creatures similar to the Death God Fu you're talking about. Ying didn't seem to hear the slight sarcasm in Xiao Jingyi's words. She just said, but the vehicle we're taking now is undoubtedly a type of UK. At the very least, it's a derivative of the information distortion caused by the relationship with the UK. I say, strange astronaut girl. She gave face to the owner boy and didn't say anything, but you keep treating her as a UK. That's too much. The police car's sound system suddenly made an opposing sound. Although I don't know what a UK is, from your attitude, I'm afraid it's not a good thing. From the perspective of road safety laws, you're not a good thing. Xiao Jingyi whispered. All right, let's go at 120 kilometers per hour. Stop it. Do you want me to resign? It's okay, I'll pay the siren. That's not the problem. Don't races to the city. Finally, I'll stop at XX Club. Wait a minute, how you to know that place? Fong Fong's twos to a point, A to a girl. No. Xiao Jingyi let out a tragic cry. It can bring misfortune to people. This thing really is a UK. Ing in the back seat also began to add to the chaos. The nature of a UK is distorted, can't be analyzed, and will affect the surrounding things, causing them to also become distorted information tumors. The most common manifestation is that it has some kind of incredible power. But the problem is, there are many things with incredible power in this city, right? Xiao Jingyi was stunned. Not to mention other things, just the existence of the bastard police car. His family currently had about 200 of them. From this point of view, until now, Xiao Jingyi's mental state was still normal. It was already very amazing. After walking for a while, Jiangyu disappeared because she needed to reserve power for the school anniversary. In the end, Su Xinqing could only carry a bag of suspicious smell alone on the road to the supermarket. What, did you find them? Fortunately, not long after, one of the spirit ghosts floated to Su Xinqing's side, gesticulating to him for a while. Thus, Su Xinqing followed the spirit ghost to Qin Xingyan and Chiketsu's location. Ah, brother. The sharp-eyed Chiketsu saw Su Xinqing, carried the plastic bag, and ran over to him with small steps. Her hard-soled leather boots made patter sounds on the sidewalk, and her innocent smile was extremely cute. As expected of my sister. While Su Xinqing gave a thumbs up in his heart, he reached out and hugged the little Chiketsu, who was running over. At the same time, he took a small step back to disperse the girl's momentum. This little bit of force naturally didn't affect Su Xinqing, but the problem was that Chiketsu probably felt like his head hit an iron plate. In order to continue to enjoy this kind of hug from his sister in the future, Su Xinqing had no choice but to use the method he practiced in the other world to disperse the force, and use his excellent control to do this. However, his actions were obviously noticed by Qin Xingyan. When Su Xinqing raised his head with a silly smile, he saw that the girl was looking at him with a very subtle gaze. If he had to make an analogy, it was probably the kind of gaze that looked at a beast. This gaze stung him very much. Ahem. Su Xinqing tried to restrain the smile on his face and asked Chiketsu seriously, "What did you buy at the supermarket?"
"Food,"
Chiketsu answered honestly. "Chiketsu, if you hug your brother like this, it will be very inconvenient for him. Can you come down first?" Qin Xingyan said to Chiketsu with a smile that Su Xinqing felt was murderous.
No.
Even if Chiketsu was literally heavier than Mount Tai, Su Xinqing would be able to lift him up with one hand for his sister, but obviously, Chiketsu was a considerate child. After hearing Qin Xingyan's words, he obediently jumped out of Su Xinqing's arms, leaving Su Xinqing with a look of disappointment. But our protagonist was also a strong-willed person, so he quickly adjusted his mood. Seeing that Qin Xingyan was still looking at him with a faint smile, he decided to change the topic. "What did you buy?" "We bought papaya, milk, royal jelly, pig trotters, carp." Chiketsu immediately began to list out the items as if he was very familiar with them. "Wait a minute, why do I feel like there's something strange about the shopping list?" Su Xinqing's mouth twitched. Sister Xingyan said that my brother likes girls with big breasts, so she told me to eat more." Chiketsu continued. "Miss Qin Xingyan, do you have anything to say?" Su Xinqing asked Qin Xingyan, who had a nonchalant expression on her face. "I'm just concerned about Chiketsu's growth." "Is there a problem? My Lilicon Siscon, Mr. Landlord?" the girl asked fearlessly. "Not good." What she said made sense. I was speechless. Su Xinqing thought about it and decided to bow down to Xingyan's a dream. Chapter 270. Although he had said so much, Qin Xingyan was actually the easiest to convince. Qin Xingyan had been cultivating in the Bailu Temple since she was a child. She even went to the moon for a period of time to further her studies. The education that Qin Xingyan was exposed to was basically the traditional type of education. Therefore, she also inherited the personality of a traditional Chinese woman. Although she would occasionally be a little black-bellied and jealous, this would not affect the girl's gentle character. Therefore, Su Shenxing successfully convinced Qin Xingyan to agree to the maid outfit without much effort. As for Chiketsu, it was even easier. The little girl was already relying on Su Shenxing. In addition, Sister Xingyan, who took care of her a lot, also agreed to the maid outfit. The little girl naturally had no resistance to it. Therefore, after 6 chapters of progress, Su Shenxing finally achieved the achievement of getting all the tenants of Sakura apartment, except for Su Shenxing himself, to agree to the maid outfit. "Let me carry it," Su Shenxing said as he took the ingredients from the two of them. Because of Chiketsu's presence, Qin Xingyan, who was already able to use the heaven and earth sleeve technique, could not openly put away the ingredients. She could only carry them with Chiketsu. "Brother, is it heavy?" Chiketsu stared at Su Shenxing with her big watery eyes and asked softly. "Don't worry, I have good stamina." Su Shenxing rolled up his sleeves and bent his arms to make a bodybuilding pose. "You don't look like you have much muscle. Why do you have so much strength?" Qin Xingyan couldn't help but poke Su Shenxing's arm. "Respect yourself. Don't touch me, girl." Su Shenxing coughed and took a step back. After fooling around for a while, Su Shenxing carried the ingredients in one hand and held Chiketsu's hand in the other as they walked home. Chiketsu's other hand was holding Qin Xingyan's hand. At first glance, they looked like a family of 3. The only thing that seemed out of place was that Qin Xingyan was too young to be a mother. As for Su Shenxing, ahaha, don't mention his uncle face. Just as the 3 people, mainly Su Shenxing and Qin Xingyan, were running away under the surprised gazes of other pedestrians, a police car drifted and stopped in front of them. Su Shenxing looked at the license plate and immediately understood where the car came from. "Xiao Jingyi, are you planning to switch careers and become a racing car driver?" he said with a cold face. Although Su Shenxing was confident that even if it was a Mercedes-Benz car at 200 kilometers per hour, the problem was that Chiketsu was also there. The little girl had never seen such a scene before. She was so shocked that she was still in a daze. If it weren't for Su Shenxing and Qin Xingyan on either side of her, the girl, who was traumatized by the car accident, would probably have been scared to tears. This situation naturally made Su Shenxing, who claimed not to have a sister complex, a little angry. "If you don't plan to explain yourself, you can only lie in a hospital bed and eat liquid food for dinner tonight. This is assault on a police officer." Xiao Jingyi, who had just walked out of the police car, trembled and subconsciously complained. Then he saw the little girl next to Su Shenxing. Oh, this is your sister? She's different from you, so cute. Little girl, uncle has bananas. Wait, old Su, I'm kidding. Don't use your fingers to make your death omen is shining in the sky. Gesture. So, what are you doing here? Su Shenxing asked with an unfriendly face. "It's about the case I'm working on. There are some situations that may need your help." "Well, can you continue?" Xiao Jingyi glanced at Chiketsu, which made the little girl timidly hide behind Qin Xingyan. By the way, Qin Xingyan was also looking at Xiao Jingyi with a disgusted expression, which made the police officer feel very uncomfortable. Su Shenxing was silent for a moment, then said to Qin Xingyan, "You and Chiketsu go back first. I want to talk to him alone." "Okay, if there's anything, remember to call me." Qin Xingyan wasn't pretentious. He knew that Su Shenxing and Xiao Jingyi might talk about some supernatural things, so he just nodded obediently, took the girl's hand, and quickly left. After watching them leave, Su Shenxing asked curiously, "Can you tell me now? What's going on?" "Get in the car first. I'll take you to see the person involved. We'll talk about it on the way." Xiao Jingyi made a pleased gesture to Su Shenxing. Su Shenxing didn't stand on ceremony. He opened the car door and got in. But then he vaguely heard the old women who were looking at him with surprise just now start a gossip again, saying things like he really did have sex with an underage girl. "Look, the police are here to arrest him. It said that the minimum sentence is 3 years. The maximum sentence is death. It must be the 4 religions. It's so disgusting." "Shut up. It's your thoughts that are disgusting." Su Shenxing roared in his heart. Maybe it was because the police car was more perceptive. After Su Shenxing got in, it didn't cause any trouble. Instead, it pretended to be an ordinary car stereo, and it played the most ethnic music on loop. Even the driving was completely different from the biker gang just now. It drove honestly and safely. It didn't even make a sudden drift when it stopped. It used a smooth and steady movement that made all the experienced drivers feel ashamed of their inferiority to stop in the parking lot of the police station. This made Xiao Jingyi, who wanted Su Xinqing to fix it, very disappointed. What you mean is, not long ago, an alien suddenly came, and then she said that there might be an unknown object called UK under Jiangjin that would cause a huge disaster, so she needed her spaceship to come to Jiangjin's airspace to carry out the construction? After listening to Xiao Jingyi's explanation, Su Xinqing's face was full of surprise. The real estate prices in the Celestial Empire have risen to the point that even the profiteers in the universe are alarmed. No, I don't think she meant to develop real estate. Xiao Jingyi made a face and ridiculed. In short, from her performance, she doesn't seem to be a hostile species, so now I'm letting Feng Xiaoqing watch her. Speaking of which, aren't you surprised to hear that there are aliens? You're still too young. I've seen a lot of things like aliens. Su Xinqing pretended to be calm and indifferent. Have you seen the Death Star in Star Wars? I was talking and laughing with its commander in the control room. Although after that, the planet fortress that the rebel army had high hopes for was split in half by Su Xinqing's sword. It didn't even make a fart before it was finished. Okay, I got it. Xiao Jingyi obviously didn't believe Su Xinqing's words. He just waved his hand perfunctorily. You can say this to that guy. As he spoke, he brought Su Xinqing into the office of the super administrator. Chapter 271. After entering the office, they communicated with a, presumably, alien emissary who was suspected of speculating in land. Finally, they went back to their own homes. Su Xinqing originally planned to do so. However, after entering the office, there was no one inside. What about the guy you mentioned? Su Xinqing asked Xiao Jingyi, who brought him here. Xiao Jingyi, who was also confused, came back to his senses and grinned as if he had a toothache. He glanced at the silver lamp representing Feng Xiaoqing's soul in the office display cabinet. This was one of the benefits of the Super Management Office, or one of the office supplies. The current state of the members of the Super Management Office could be judged by the candlelight on it. The flame on the silver lamp was no different from usual. Feng Xiaoqing should not be in any danger. He motioned for Su Xinqing to sit anywhere and then sat down in his own seat. He took out his domestic mobile phone from his pocket and said, "Wait a minute, I'll call Feng Xiaoqing and ask." After a while, the phone was connected. "Hello, Xiaoqing, where are you now?" "What, the mall?" Ignoring Su Xinqing's playful expression, Xiao Jingyi continued to ask shamelessly, "Is the guy I brought with you?" "Oh, it's good to be together." Probably afraid that the more he said, the more Su Xinqing could use against him. So after chatting for a while, Xiao Jingyi hung up the phone. "How is it?" Su Xinqing asked casually. Although he could hear the voice on the phone if he listened carefully, Su Xinqing still had some morals after all. He would not casually eavesdrop on the young couple's conversation. "Because the guy named Ing is dressed too strangely. Just like I told you in the car, she has been wearing a set of clothes similar to a spacesuit." Xiaoqing felt that this did not seem very good, so she took her to buy clothes. "It's the newly opened mall in the city center recently." Xiao Jingyi shrugged. "We can wait here for them to come back. If you are in a hurry, we can go to the mall. Let's go over." Su Xinqing sighed. "I'm different from you. My family is waiting for me to go back for dinner." Although the dishes were not aphrodisiac, the fact that they were breast enlargement made him feel a little subtle. "All right, let's go then." Xiao Jingyi put his finger in the car key ring and spun it twice before standing up from his seat. With Su Xinqing in charge, the old police car naturally didn't dare to make any trouble. The two of them safely arrived at the newly opened shopping mall. Although it wasn't a holiday today, there were still a lot of people who came out to shop because it was already past the rush hour. Therefore, at first glance, it felt like there was a sea of people inside. Xiaoqing and the others are selling women's clothing on the second floor. "Wait, let me see where the elevator is." Although Xiao Jingyi was already the boss of Jiang Jin's super administrative office, he was still just an ordinary person. He was sweating profusely as he squeezed through the crowd. He hurriedly turned back and said, "Old Su, follow me closely. Be careful not to get lost. F***CK. Where are they?" On the other hand, with Su Shenxing's physical strength, not to mention in this kind of shopping mall, even during the supermarket's special price period, he could come and go freely among a group of aunties with explosive fighting power. However, just after walking a few steps behind Xiao Jingyi, he found that something was wrong. There was something in the crowd. Since Su Shenxing's perception wasn't outstanding, the things that he could sense were naturally much stronger than ordinary abnormal things. Therefore, he didn't continue to follow Xiao Jingyi. Anyway, according to Xiao Jingyi, the guy who seemed to be an alien didn't seem to be dangerous. In contrast, Su Shenxing was naturally more concerned about the strange aura in the crowd. It didn't take long for him to find a strange thing. No, to be precise, it should be a strange creature. That creature should be a spirit creature like a ghost spirit, but it was different from a ghost spirit that had a fixed shape, although it could change shape. It was floating about 2 meters in the air, and it was more like a slime in an amorphous state. At this time, that creature was releasing many tentacles, and those tentacles were connected to some ordinary people in the shopping mall. But those ordinary people didn't seem to feel anything, and they just continued to do what they were originally doing. Although he didn't feel any danger from that thing, and those who were touched by the tentacles didn't show any symptoms of vitality being absorbed, Su Shenxing felt that that thing was a bit strange. According to Su Shenxing's creed, if he couldn't solve a problem, he would try physics first. So he was going to pretend to stretch his back and quietly punch the thing to kill it. However, that thing quickly retracted its tentacles as if it felt murderous intent, and then flew away in the direction away from Su Shenxing. "TSK, I was discovered," Su Shenxing muttered and chased after that thing. Even if he squeezed people away on the way, he could only hurriedly apologize. Fortunately, that thing didn't seem to have high intelligence. It didn't fly into the crowd or rely on the convenient ability of a spirit to escape through the wall. Instead, it flew to a secluded escape passage. So Su Shenxing also chased after it. As a result, when he opened the door of the escape passage, he saw a girl in a pale pink dress trying to close an old-fashioned suitcase. The old-fashioned suitcase looked dirty and seemed to be old, but what Su Shenxing couldn't figure out was that there was a patch-like thing on it. He didn't know if it was the design of the suitcase itself, or it was really patched for some other reason. Just as Su Shenxing was about to continue to chase, the girl suddenly raised her head. The pair of purple-red inorganic eyes made Su Shenxing almost subconsciously understand one thing. This girl was not human. "Who are you?" Since it wasn't something that couldn't be communicated with like slime, Su Shenxing naturally wouldn't rush up and punch her directly in the face. Instead, he asked, "I should be the one asking you this question, right?" The girl didn't answer Su Shenxing's question. Instead, she pressed the suitcase as if she was facing a formidable enemy. "An ordinary person," Su Shenxing replied as usual. Then he noticed that the girl's words were not spoken in Chinese or any language on Earth. "Don't joke around. An existence like you can't be a native creature of this planet or even this world. Since you have grown to this extent, it means that you have destroyed at least one civilization." Su Shenxing was sure that it was the first time he met the other party, but for some reason, the other party was full of hostility towards him. The reason why he didn't deny her words was that in a sense, Su Shenxing did destroy several civilizations, including the Great Devil Realm. "Who are you?" So Su Shenxing asked again. After a moment of silence, the girl answered slowly. "You're kind, UK002, the cancer of the world, ing." Chapter 272. A long time ago in a certain world there was a little girl. She was very ordinary, but also very special. She was able to retain the memories of her previous life, but in every life, she would die tragically before reaching adulthood due to various accidents. She was eaten by wild beasts, died of an incurable disease in that era, burned to death as a witch after revealing her past memories, trampled to death by horses in a war, killed as food in an era where there was a lack of food due to years of poor harvests, bitten to death by rats without any treatment, frozen to death in a corner in the cold winter without any food to fill her stomach or firewood to warm her up, involved in a car accident and turned into mincemeat, fire, flood, earthquake, typhoon. She died again and was born again and again. How long did this painful reincarnation last? She didn't know which life it was, but she planted a plant that was said to have a long lifespan but would never bloom. Then, in every life, she would find that plant, take care of it, tell it everything, and wait for it to grow and bloom. The ornamental plant that was originally only the size of a palm, after countless years, finally grew to the size of a tree. And the girl was still repeating the painful reincarnation. Her spirit once collapsed, but she would wake up again after endless time, and then be forcibly defeated by the pain again. I curse this endless reincarnation. I curse my life. I curse everything in this world. It would be great if this world was destroyed. After going crazy for God knows how many times, the girl leaned on the tree-like plant and issued a curse full of malice and resentment. That night, she was raped to death by a few passing drunkards. It was as if her curse had taken effect. Her endless cycle of reincarnation had come to an end in this tragic situation. Then, the world changed. The land of the world was polluted, and no plants could be grown. The water source also gradually lost the ability to irrigate crops. The world seemed to have taken back everything that it had generously given to people. Humans were in despair. Believers worshipped the only tree in this barren land that could still maintain its green color as a god. Scientists believed that they could find a way to grow crops again from this plant, while the starving humans only wanted to eat the plant to fill their stomachs. But in the end, no one succeeded. When the world was on the verge of destruction, the last human on Earth suddenly realized that this plant was not some god, but the culprit that destroyed the entire world. Planets, galaxies, universes, worlds. When this plant completely destroyed a world, it did not disappear with the destruction of the world. Instead, it wandered to other worlds and continued the unfinished curse. When the first executor of the Space Administration found it, the plant had already taken root in one world and extended its branches to 8 other worlds, becoming a true world tree. Unfortunately, it was different from most world trees and legends. It was the destroyer of worlds, the cancer of the world. The first executor used the technology of the Space Administration and his own abilities to understand what had happened. He then cut off the root of the world tree and found a bud in the crown of the world tree. What was born from it was a little girl. According to the name of this plant in the civilization of the destroyed world, the first executor named the little girl who inherited the power of the cancer of the world Ing. He personally taught and raised the little girl. Because the first executor did not deliberately hide Ying's background, Ing knew that she was born with the sin of destroying several worlds. After Ing became an adult, the existence of the UK was finally confirmed by the Space Administration. The girl did not intend to shirk this crime. Instead, in order to repay her sins, she took the initiative to wander the endless worlds, looking for and taking in other UKs, protecting those worlds that were in danger. To her, all UKs were her compatriots. She also knew that most of the UKs did not want to destroy the world. But reality would not change according to their will. Their existence would lead the world to destruction. So she was kind to all UKs, but she would not let the UKs wander in the ordinary world. I don't have the same kind. Su Xinqing and the other party looked at each other for a long time and slowly said. The girl did not have the intention to argue with Su Xinqing. She just stood up the suitcase in her hand. The metal buckle on the edge of the suitcase opened automatically with a click. Although I haven't found UK-004 yet, I won't let such a dangerous existence like you run around. Oh? Su Xinqing raised his eyebrows. What do you want to do? Capture me? Or, even more directly, kill me? I don't want to harm you, but please understand that all UKs are harmful to the normal world. The girl said seriously. If you are willing to leave this world with me and abide by the rules, then I can still guarantee you a certain degree of freedom. I refuse. Su Shenxing did not hesitate to reject the other party's proposal. That's a pity. The girl sighed as if she was really disappointed with Su Shenxing's decision from the bottom of her heart. If that's the case, then I can only use force. Biological UKs are not affected by the interference of normal information. They will only affect normal information in the opposite direction. In the normal world, they will not be injured or die. They are almost invincible. Therefore, they will often uncontrollably cause damage to the world. They are proud of their power and will not regret it. Following her words, the brown suitcase also opened a small hole. The girl took out a coin from inside and threw it on the ground. Su Shenxing suddenly felt as if he was pulled into an abnormal space. Could this be the so-called barrier to facilitate the development of the plot? Before he could complain, the girl kicked over the suitcase. The suitcase also opened because of her movement. The only thing that can interfere and affect UKs is other UKs. Unfortunately, for thousands of years, I have not done anything else but collect UKs. Countless crystal-clear branches shot out from the suitcase and shrouded Su Shenxing in an imposing manner as if they were going to shoot him into a sieve. I don't know what you have experienced. Facing this overwhelming attack, Su Shenxing did not even have the thought of dodging. He just waved his fist fiercely. He did not even touch the crystal branches, but the crystal branches were like glass products that hit an iron wall. They shattered into sparkling fragments and slowly fell down like snow. For a moment, the scene was even quite beautiful. However, Su Shenxing was not in the mood to enjoy this beautiful scene because a huge lizard with eyes on its head had already crawled out of the suitcase. The scene of a big fat man squeezing out of a biscuit-sized hole was very strange and funny. However, the lizard did not hesitate to attack Su Shenxing. However, Su Shenxing crushed the lizard's head with one foot. The moment it regenerated, he blasted it into smithereens with a punch. However, the giant lizard was not that simple. It seemed to be regenerating from the molecular level at an extremely fast speed. Su Shenxing was stunned for about 9 3/4 milliseconds. Then he smashed it into pieces with a punch. However, Jiangjin is still considered my territory for the time being. It's better for you to behave. In the next moment, when the girl released a new monster, Su Shenxing used the high-speed rail of an ordinary person and appeared behind her. Then, he directly knocked out the cancer of the world, who might have been able to destroy Earth if she fought personally, and ended the battle. Chapter 273. Xiao Xingyi found the panicked Fang Xiaoqing on the second floor. It was already 10 minutes after he separated from Su Shenxing. Where's that girl? He saw that Fang Xiaoqing's expression was not right and hurriedly asked. I don't know. I just bought clothes for her, but when I was paying the bill, she suddenly disappeared. There are too many people here, so I couldn't find her. Fang Xiaoqing looked a little guilty. I'm sorry, it's all my fault. I was too careless and didn't keep an eye on her. Now is not the time to pursue responsibility. Xiao Xingyi rubbed his temples and tried to calm himself down. If the other party was lost on the street or in other places where the crowd was relatively sparse, he would not be so nervous, but the problem was that there were too many people in this mall. If the other party did something bad, many innocent people might be hurt. At that time, not to mention that it would be extremely troublesome to deal with the aftermath, even Xiao Xingyi's conscience would not be able to live with it. The only thing he could be thankful for now was that Su Shenxing was also in this mall. If that guy was there, no matter what happened, at least he could suppress it in the first place. In short, I brought Su Shenxing with me. Let's find a way to meet him first. Although that was what he said, to be honest, Xiao Xingyi was also somewhat at a loss as to how to find Su Shenxing. Of course, he had already called his phone, but for some reason, even though they were in the same mall, the notification that came after a busy tone on the phone said that the other party might be outside the circle. In the end, he had no choice but to go to the front desk of the mall. He wanted to rely on his identity as a police officer to ask the staff of the mall to broadcast Su Shenxing to gather at the front desk. However, Su Shenxing appeared by himself. Sorry, I just saw something I cared about, so I left for a while. He was carrying a young girl on his back and a somewhat shabby suitcase in his hand. Where's the guy you wanted to introduce me to? Then he noticed the gaze of Xiao Jingyi and the others. To be precise, the people nearby were staring at Su Xinqing with vigilant eyes as if they were looking at a human trafficker. Although I already knew that you were a Lilicon, I didn't expect that you would actually take this step as my friend. Xiao Jingyi's face was full of vicissitudes and helplessness. Sarah, my brother. I will pray for you in prison. If you keep talking like that, I'll stuff your gun up your ass and let you feel what it's like to be gay. Su Xinqing threatened, without hesitation. Wouldn't that count as assaulting a police officer? Xiao Jingyi's face darkened. Don't worry, I will use my connections physics to turn this case into an ordinary civil dispute. Su Xinqing answered seriously. You actually didn't deny assaulting a police officer. Lilicons who understand the law are so scary. Xiao Jingyi complained with an embarrassed face, but when he noticed Su Xinqing's malicious smile, he immediately put on a serious expression like a public servant. But let's put aside the joke for now. What's the matter with the little girl behind you? This matter is more troublesome to talk about. Su Xinqing had a headache about where to start explaining, and he sorted out his words in his stomach. But at this time, Fang Xiaoqing looked at the girl with a surprised expression. She tugged at Xiao Jingyi's arm and whispered to him, "That child is the alien."
What?
Because he had never seen Ying's face under the mask, Xiao Jingyi was not clear about the girl's appearance. Previously, because of her short height, he thought that she was one of those little gray men that often appeared in sci-fi movies. But immediately, he also noticed the suitcase in Su Xinqing's hand. The alien seemed to have been carrying that thing. Their whispers naturally couldn't escape Su Xinqing's ears, which made Su Xinqing couldn't help but laugh. He didn't expect that the goal of this trip was the little girl on his back. Since the goal has been achieved, how about we leave here first? Su Xinqing said, I think that if we continue to stay here, maybe someone will call the police. No matter what, simply flipping the alien over didn't count as achieving the goal, right? Originally, Xiao Jingyi thought that this would be the first time in human history that a third party made contact, but in the end, it inexplicably ended like this, which made him feel a little awkward. But when he thought about how all the things related to Su Xinqing seemed to be ended by physical means, he felt that there was nothing wrong with this. When he woke up, she was lying on a soft bed. The sheets and quilt were a little old, but they were very clean. It seemed that they had been recently dried, and there was a smell of sunshine. She sat up from the bed and realized that she was in a bedroom that wasn't too big. There were almost no furnishings in the bedroom. Other than the bed, the bedside table, and a wardrobe, there was no other furniture. Judging from the slanted ceiling above her head, it was likely to be a loft or something like that. The girl first subconsciously checked her body, not to check if she was violated when she was unconscious, but to check if there were any signs of germination in her body. As the Cancer of the UK, 002 world, Ing had the power to destroy the world unconsciously. Although she usually kept her power in a dormant state through the interference of the information suppressant and other UKs, she still managed to release a little of her power during the battle with the unidentified UK. When she wanted to come to Earth to find UK 004, the shipboard AI of the Violet once said that UK 004 was not dangerous enough for the girl to come to Earth by violating the rules. The meaning of this sentence was actually not that they were worried that the girl would be hurt by UK 004, but that the girl's threat to Earth was far greater than UK 004's. There are no signs of germination. After finding that there was no abnormality in her body, the girl was relieved. Then she began to worry about her suitcase. The only thing that could affect a UK was other UKs. Similarly, the suitcase that could accommodate so many UKs was actually UK 018, the Venator box, a box that could theoretically store everything. The box was filled with the fragments of destroyed worlds, and the UKs recovered by Ing were stored in the fragments of various worlds. However, Ing was still careless at that time, causing UK 018 to be bitten through by UK 004, allowing UK 004 to escape from it. This was also the origin of the patch on the Venator box. But then she found that her worries seemed to be unnecessary. It was because UK 018 was placed next to the bedside table. It seemed to have been washed and looked much cleaner. However, there were a few talismans stuck on the metal buckle which seemed to be to prevent the things inside from escaping. But compared to the talismans, what really bound UK 018 was a strange power on the talismans. It was a kind of energy that was almost distorted by a UK, but it was slightly different. "Oh, you're awake?" At this time, the door of the room opened, and the man who knocked her out with one blow walked in with a small steaming casserole, then closed the door with his foot. "Are you going to do me a favor and ask me to let you go?" Ing asked in a low voice.
"I don't mean that."
"Anyway, you can't beat me." Su Xinqing smiled slightly. "It's just that I'm not very good at talking about big principles, and I always think that it's difficult to persuade people with those overly righteous remarks." It was like telling others to cross the road by crossing the zebra crossing. Although it was a very correct statement, in some narrow places where there were almost no cars passing by, and the zebra crossing was at the intersection more than 10 minutes away, saying this to people crossing the road would definitely cause displeasure. So instead of using words, I think it's faster to use physics and reality to make people understand, Su Xinqing said seriously. "So, change into a maid's outfit and come with me." The girl was silent for a moment, then she frowned. "I always feel that your last sentence has nothing to do with the first sentence." "You're mistaken," Su Xinqing denied firmly. Chapter 274. Because there was a considerable gap between her strength and Su Xinqing, her chances of winning in a head-on battle were almost zero. Even if she used other more dangerous UK, she was afraid that it would lead to the collapse and destruction of this world before the battle was over. Therefore, Ing decided to compromise with the other party in a short time and see what Su Xinqing's reality was before making any plans. In addition, finding UK 004 was also a top priority. "Oh, you're awake." Seeing Ing obediently walking down the stairs behind Su Xinqing, Qin Xingyan, who was reading the news on his mobile phone, raised his head and showed the girl a hearty smile. "How are you feeling?" "Thanks to this gentleman." Ing glared at Su Xinqing, then replied with a blank expression, "I'm still healthy." "That's good." After Qin Xingyan finished speaking, he lowered his head again. It was not that this genius girl from the Bailu Temple was addicted to her mobile phone and had become a person who lowered her head, but this girl was not very good at socializing. She only spoke to Ing out of politeness. After carefully sizing up Qin Xingyan, Ing asked curiously, "Excuse me this." She raised her worn-out suitcase with one hand and pointed at the paper talismans on the metal buckle with the other hand. "Did you put this on?" Only UK could affect UK. This was the conclusion that Ing reached after traveling hundreds of thousands of worlds to search for UK for thousands of years. But these paper talismans on UK 018's virtual Sinluo suitcase broke the convention. They actually suppressed the UK in the suitcase that wanted to escape while she was unconscious. This made Ing a little excited. Maybe this time, she had made a big discovery. Therefore, after seeing Qin Xingyan with the energy aura on the paper talismans, Ing couldn't help but ask. "I did put it on, but if it's the ability to suppress the things in your suitcase, it has nothing to do with me." Qin Xingyan didn't take the credit for himself. Instead, he answered truthfully, "If it weren't for Su Xinqing, the landlord of this apartment, who set a special protection on my talismans, I'm afraid that my paper talismans alone wouldn't have been able to contain the things in the box." "Is the person you're talking about the one who came down before me?" Ing asked. "Yes, that's right." Qin Xingyan nodded. But Ing suddenly became depressed. When a part of the UK was placed beside an item for a period of time, it would cause the item's information to be distorted. Although the distorted item itself wasn't a UK, as a derivative of a UK, it could still affect other UK to some extent. However, it was unknown whether this effect came from the distorted item itself, or from the aura left on the item by the original UK. That's enough chatting. At this time, Su Xinqing walked over from the living room. "Xingyan, pack up and take this guy with you. We're going out together." "Where are we going?" Qin Xingyan switched his phone to standby mode and asked after stuffing it into his pocket. We're going to get the most important item for this event, Su Xinxing said with a serious face. I was wondering what it would be, but it turns out to be a maid outfit. And after talking about maid outfits for so long, we haven't even prepared a shadow yet. On the way to the tailor shop, Qin Xingyan couldn't help but complain. Although you can buy cheap maid outfits on the internet, those common maid outfits don't look good on you. I'm afraid that it won't be comfortable either. If you want to get a batch of good maid outfits, you'll have to make them close to your body. Su Xinxing explained logically. I know of a clothing store. The owner of the store started out as a tailor. She's really good at making clothes. How do you know so much about this kind of store? Qin Xingyan couldn't help but complain. Also, they're obviously going to make clothes. Why are the three of us the only ones going? What about the others? It doesn't matter. I've already gotten their measurements by beating around the bush. Su Xinxing righteously gave a thumbs up. The proud expression on his face made people who didn't know him think that he had accomplished something great. Although it's amazing that you're so well prepared, I don't know why I can't admire you. Qin Xingyan's head was filled with black lines. It was as if he was exhausted by Su Xinxing's imagination. As the three of them walked, light snow began to fall from the sky. Su Xinxing looked up at the sky and realized that the originally bright sky had unknowingly been covered by clouds. It now looked gloomy. It's snowing?
How can it be?
Qin Xingyan reached out to catch a snowflake. The crystal-clear hexagon immediately melted under the temperature of her hand. She frowned slightly. It's only autumn now, and the temperature is... Many people on the road were still wearing short-sleeve dresses. Even Ing was wearing a short-sleeve dress. No one thought that it would snow in this kind of weather. The children seemed to be very happy about the snow, while the adults were amazed and dragged their children home to change clothes. Do you know what's going on? Su Xinxing suddenly turned around and asked the girl. I don't know. Ing replied without hesitation. But in her heart, she felt that it was very likely that UK-004 had begun to affect the situation in this world. However, out of anger and the mentality of a public official who didn't want to get the two people in front of her involved in dangerous events, Ing didn't speak out her speculation. Qin Xingyan closed her eyes and stood in the snow to feel it. After a while, she brushed off the snow on her shoulder and said to Su Xinxing, there's no demon aura mixed in it. It shouldn't be a trick of the monsters. I see. Su Xinxing touched his chin. It seems that we have to find the guy who has the most right to speak at the moment. Are we going to find Police Officer Xiao Jingyi? Qin Xingyan asked. Ing naturally knew this name, and the appearance of the policeman who seemed to have a screw loose suddenly appeared in her mind. No, that guy is probably more confused than me now. Xiao Jingyi in the super administration office sneezed. Su Xinxing shook his head. His perception ability was poor, but it depended on who he was compared to. Taking Xiao Jingyi as an ordinary person, Su Xinxing felt that he could perceive more things than him even if he covered his eyes and plugged his ears. I understand. Qin Xingyan was puzzled for a while and immediately showed a look of understanding. Yes, isn't there an old lady who has lived for many years in the back mountain of Jiangjin? It's on the way there now. Su Xinxing said with a fake smile, and it just so happens that I have to settle the account with that guy who pretended to be my sister a few days ago. Chapter 275. When they arrived at the back mountain of Jiangjin, Su Xinxing felt that something was wrong. I always feel that it's too quiet. Qin Xingyan, who had been here with Su Xinxing, looked around and couldn't help muttering strangely. Because it wasn't late autumn yet, it was reasonable to say that even if it had started to snow, there should still be many animals moving around to store food for the winter. But they didn't even see a bird all the way up the mountain. I'm afraid that something has happened here. Su Xinxing frowned slightly, feeling that things didn't seem to be as simple as he thought. In fact, if an ordinary person came here, they would probably subconsciously not want to continue climbing the mountain after taking the first step. Then, unknowingly, they would leave this place to do other things. It wasn't a tactic similar to driving away idlers, but simply because this mountain was shrouded in a force that was close to death, all creatures would have a reaction of not wanting to get close to it. Just like if something sharp appeared in front of the eyes, people would subconsciously close their eyes. It was a kind of instinct. However, because Su Xinxing was a special individual, this kind of thing that was effective on ordinary people couldn't stimulate his survival instinct, so he didn't notice it at all. Qin Xingyan, on the other hand, needed to achieve a leakless body to become a cultivator. This was a sublimation on a biological level. Many human instincts would be gradually forgotten in this kind of cultivation. In addition, the energy in the air was not a real death aura, so it did not affect her. Therefore, she did not notice anything wrong. And Ing was not a person of this world in the first place, so she didn't know what the death was. Besides, she had destroyed several worlds, so in terms of death, she was definitely 1 or 2 billion times stronger than the one shrouded in this mountain, so the three of them ran all the way to the place where the earth lowly lived. The dilapidated dormitory was much more desolate than it was in the summer. The originally verdant Boston ivy had almost withered, revealing the dormitory's mottled walls. The paint had been peeled off due to the construction of the dormitory, and most of it had been peeled off. "Earth, are you there?" Su Xinxing shouted first. However, the other party did not react. So he took out a few coins and threw them on the ground, trying to see if he could lure out the greedy lowly. However, there was still no response. Su Xinxing's heart sank. Did that guy go out, or did something happen to him? "Xingyan, do you know any earth escape spells?" He turned around and asked Qin Xingyan. Earth escape is a basic escape technique. I know how to use it, but there are basically some special restrictions in the places where immortals live. Even for us cultivators, unless we set foot on the Jindan Dao, we basically can't find and reach their residences. Qin Xingyan said helplessly as she shrugged. Speaking of which, Emoli seemed to have dug into the ground before. Su Xinxing scratched his face and began to regret not bringing Emoli out. Even if Emoli was in a deep seal, his imba physique would not change. Just like Su Xinxing, he could ignore most spells and barriers. There's no other way. I hope that guy doesn't faint when he sees the miserable state of his home. Su Xinxing weighed the current situation and the repair costs to the earth, and then decisively punched the ground. As a result, all the residents of Jiangjin City felt the earth tremble, and the Earthquake Bureau detected an earthquake with a magnitude of about 4. However, no one noticed that the mountain behind Jiangjin University had shrunk by nearly 5 centimeters because of the earthquake. Cough, cough. What are you doing? You can easily cause damage to the world like this. Ing coughed twice because of the smoke and dust on the ground, then stared at Su Xinxing with dissatisfaction. No problem, I've already restrained most of my strength. It definitely won't cause any damage, Su Xinxing said with a face full of confidence. Then the trees in the circle around them cracked into splinters of wood. Well, it shouldn't cause too much damage. So Su Xinxing immediately changed his words to the stunned Ing. Although Su Xinxing said so solemnly, Ing still insisted on checking the stability of the world in the end. The result was beyond her expectations. Su Xinxing's attack just now did not cause too much damage to the world. How is this possible? The girl could not believe it. That's why I said, unless it's teleportation, physical, I'll pay attention to protecting this world. Su Xinxing said proudly. What does teleportation mean? The girl asked suspiciously. Nothing. The Earth's matter is more important now. Su Xinxing changed the topic with a straight face. He actually used his fist to open the Earth God's residence, although this method of opening is a bit. Qin Xingyan still could not recover from the fact that Su Xinxing used his fist to open the Earth God's residence. This is not fantasy. There's no way to invade the realm of gods with physical means. That kind of thing can wait for future research. Su Xinxing took the lead and jumped down. Anyway, let's see if that guy is here. I think I stepped on something soft. Lord Earth God. It's okay, I held back, I didn't step on it too hard. Why is her arm bent in a weird direction? I think if we don't do anything, the life of this world will be in danger. It's okay, let's calm down and then dig her out from the floor. Where is this? When Earth God Lowly woke up, she found herself lying on a bed that she was not familiar with. It was snowing outside the window, but the room was very warm. If you looked carefully, you could see that although there was an air conditioner in the room, it was not turned on, and the heat came from the oil tank next to the bed. Are you awake? This is Sakura Apartments. The one in charge of looking after her was the new god Chihaya Fukuyama, who had learned from her for a while. Asahi has already gone to cook porridge for you. You can continue to rest for a while. Why am I here? Could it be that I played games with Immerse too late last night, so I stayed over? The earth god mumbled strangely. But why don't I have any memories of this? Chihaya Fukuyama looked at the Huaxia god with a gentle, or rather, pitiful, gaze. How do you feel?
Body?
It's okay. It's just that my arm hurts a little. The earth god moved her arm. Speaking of which, I had a nightmare yesterday. A demon suddenly broke my divine realm and stepped on me into the floor. It felt very real. Strange, I haven't had any dreams since I became a god. Chihaya Fukuyama suddenly felt that it was better not to tell the truth to the earth god who was once his teacher. Chapter 276. If you want to use a sentence to summarize the current situation, it would probably be terrible or something bad. It should be said that the earth god was indeed an immortal. She clearly looked like she could die at any time, but after Su Xinqing used the holy elixir he brought back from the other world, she became lively again not long after. At this time, she was at the dining table in Sakura apartment, chewing on the food cooked by Song Yu while trying to pretend to be very serious. However, the way she ate like a reincarnated hungry ghost really made everyone in Sakura apartment unable to be serious. So, can't you explain clearly what happened in Jiangjin? Su Xinqing had to ask. The snow that had been falling since yesterday had lasted for a whole day. Now, there was a layer of snow that was neither thick nor thin on the road outside. Perhaps most people would think that it was not unacceptable for it to snow in late autumn. After all, the El Niño phenomenon had been discussed for a long time a few years ago. Moreover, it had snowed in Jiangjin in early summer 3 years ago. Therefore, they were only a little surprised by the snow this time and complained that it might affect the traffic. After that, they did not pay much attention to it. On the other hand, some children were very happy about it and had a lot of fun making snowmen and snowball fights. However, the extraordinary creatures in Sakura apartments didn't think so. As long as they sensed it carefully, it wasn't hard to notice that the sudden autumn snow contained an inexplicable and strange spirit aura. That point alone made everyone understand that the snow wasn't that simple. In this way, Jiangjin University's anniversary celebration can't be held normally. Su Xinqing slammed the table and complained, causing Song Yu to worry that the wooden table would be smashed apart by Su Xinqing. Well, it seemed that there were still people who did not feel that there was something fishy about this matter. Fortunately, Su Xinqing was also a person who was used to living a hard life. Naturally, he would not really slam the table that was part of his inseparable property. Therefore, this wooden table with nearly 18 years of history once again survived Su Xinqing's hands. Speaking of which, why does Su Sang care so much about Jiangjin University's anniversary celebration? Didn't you say that you were forced to participate? Chihaya Fukuyama glanced at the indignant Su Xinqing and asked. Of course, it's to protect the historical practices that have been passed down for so many years in Jiangjin University. We don't want them to be drowned out by the long river of time, so that future generations can only understand them through literature. Su Xinqing waved his hand and said righteously, "What about the truth?" Chihaya Fukuyama narrowed his eyes and asked coldly. It wasn't easy for me to persuade everyone successfully. If I don't see the maids in disguise, I won't be able to rest in peace. Su Xinqing waved his hand and said righteously. Aha, how should I put it? Mr. Su, you look forward to it so much that I feel embarrassed. Asahi Sakura Kanji scratched his face with a wry smile. In addition, there were also piercing glares from Song Yu and Qin Xingyan. Mr. Landlord, your intentions are too obvious. Emily patted Su Xinqing's waist because she couldn't reach his shoulder. Brother, if you don't mind, Chiketsu can wear it for you to see. Chiketsu comforted her in a low voice. Jasmine let out a short and strange sound like a kitten that had been stepped on. Then, she stared at Ichiyue with a shocked expression that said, "Not good. The lowly character has been reused, and the one over there with the girly attribute seems even cuter." Chiketsu, who was stared at by her, blinked and then playfully stuck out his tongue at Emoli. For some reason, Su Xinqing, who accidentally saw this scene, subconsciously thought of Chiketsu. Chiketsu, Chan's victory-ing, who didn't understand the situation at all, took a big sip of the tea that Asahi Sakura Kanji made for her and then spat out the tea leaves. In short, Su Xinqing realized that he had inadvertently become the target of public criticism. He immediately changed the topic and said, "Mr. Landlord, don't just stand there, answer me. Who's the Mr. Landlord?" "I'm the beautiful 11-year-old. The lowly waved her arms in dissatisfaction. "My Chinese isn't very good, but you can't use the word beautiful to describe an 11-year-old, right?" Miss Witch, who seemed to be a little silly, unintentionally gave the lowly a knowing blow. Anyway, let's talk about this later. Because she couldn't think of a rebuttal, the lowly could only reluctantly say it. "You still want to talk about this later?" Song Yu was shocked. Are all the immortals in the Celestial Empire like this? Qin Xingyan seemed to be disillusioned with the Celestial Empire's system of deification. After arguing for a while, the topic finally returned to the right track. Although I've said it before, because there are more people, I'll say it again. After Su Xinqing asked Emoli to bring Chiketsu to play the game, for some reason, Su Xinqing felt that Emoli seemed to have an inexplicable competitive feeling towards little Chiketsu. The lowly continued, "There's a problem with Jiang Jin's earth veins." "Hasn't this problem been solved?" Su Xinqing asked curiously. "In order to prevent the situation from worsening, Jasmine and I even made a trip to Fusang and brought back that thing called the Suppressing Creek Seal." As he spoke, he glanced at the two beside him. "And we also brought back other gifts." So we're just gifts for that thing." "Wah, don't be discouraged. One day you'll also become the female lead." The Fusang duo hugged each other and acted out a small play. In fact, although the situation of the spirit veins has stabilized a little after obtaining the seal of suppression, the overall situation is still deteriorating. This situation hasn't changed. To be honest, it's already incredible that it can last until now. The lowly sighed. "Has this happened before?" Su Xinqing couldn't help but ask. Yes. When it came to serious matters, the lowly looked unexpectedly serious. "I don't remember exactly how long it has been, but there was once an incident where the spirit veins were leaked. And because the spirit energy in that era was much higher than in the modern era, the consequences were very serious. Jiang Jin almost became a dead zone, a paradise for demons." "Then, how was it solved that time?" Su Xinqing continued to ask. Although there was a group of monsters like them, Jiangjin wouldn't become a paradise for demons. However, the leaking of the spirit veins would also affect the earth itself. If Jiangjin became a barren land, then as the guardian, Su Xinqing would be in a bit of an awkward situation. After all, Su Xinqing was very strong, but as the saying goes, every profession has its own specialization. Those arrogant and domineering city soldiers wouldn't necessarily know how to fix toilets, right? Hearing this, the others also showed an expression of concern. Human sacrifice. In that era, there was a girl with extremely strong spirit energy. In order to prevent the spirit veins from leaking and protect the safety of the people of Jiangjin, she was willing to use herself as a sacrifice. After creating a powerful sacrificial ceremony based on Nuwa's mending of the heavens, she used her own life to block the hole in the spirit veins. Chapter 277. For a moment, the restaurant was shrouded in silence. Although he knew that repairing the spirit vein would not be an easy task, he did not expect that it would require a human sacrifice. Moreover, from the point of possessing extremely powerful spiritual energy, it seemed that the method of grabbing human scum to plug the hole would not work. "Don't worry, I'm Jiangjin's earth god after all. Although it's a little troublesome, I still have a backup plan if I have no other choice." As if to dispel the gloomy atmosphere in the restaurant, Earth God Lowly revealed a cheerful smile. Lord Earth God, don't tell me that the backup plan you mentioned is to use yourself to plug the hole? Qin Xingyan narrowed his eyes as he asked. None of the people present were stupid. If Earth God Lowly's backup plan really had no problems at all, she would not have to worry about the spirit vein for so long. In the end, it even caused Jiangjin's climate to change because of it, and she still had not made up her mind. After being asked this question by Qin Xingyan, Earth God Lowly's smile suddenly froze. She then turned her face slightly to avoid everyone's gaze and said in a dry voice, How? How could that be? This guy was too easy to understand. Suddenly, other than Mo Li and Chiketsu who were playing in the living room, and Ing who was studying tea, everyone present had the same thought in an instant. Probably because the expressions on their faces were too obvious, Earth God Lowly simply shouted in a self-deprecating tone, Anyway, this era doesn't need gods anymore. As long as you guys still live here, even if I'm not here anymore, nothing will happen to Jiangjin. Because there's no reward, I refuse, Su Shinxing said firmly. As the guardian of this land appointed by the gods, you have to be responsible. I think it's better to reconsider. After all, this land doesn't want to lose its guardian. Chihaya Fukuyama's words were agreed by the others. Speaking of which, if it doesn't work in terms of mysticism, can we use scientific methods to solve this problem? As an ordinary human, Song Yu's mind was much more flexible than Qin Xingyan and the rest of the mystics. He immediately shifted his gaze to Ing, who was said to be an alien. Miss Alien, do you have any ideas? Although I don't know what you're talking about, if you want to stop the snowfall, you just have to disperse the clouds in the sky. You can also change the temperature by adjusting the atmosphere. But I don't think this can solve your problem fundamentally. Well, in your words, treating the symptoms but not the root cause. I think all of this is probably caused by the UK 00 for I'm chasing. If you're willing to let me dig up the city to search for the UK 00 for hiding below. So Ing, who seemed to be a little taciturn, immediately began to talk at length, trying to persuade these people in front of her to help her find the escaped UK 004. Although she had only been in this world for a day and didn't know much about this world, or what the political system of this planet was like, with the existence of Su Shinxing, an unidentified individual who could beat the other UK 004, the girl estimated that this so-called Sakura apartment might be one of the highest decision-making bodies in this world. Therefore, she spared no effort to persuade them to help dig up the whole city. Even the Earth Lowly, who had always been indifferent, was shocked by her words. She looked at Su Shinxing in astonishment. Is this child still asleep? She's an alien who has destroyed a civilization. You should watch your words, Su Shinxing said solemnly. The Earth Lowly wanted to say something, but when she thought about it, she felt that aliens didn't seem to be under the control of an Earth god like her, especially a lowly Earth god. In the end, she could only give up. After muttering silently for a while, she said angrily, In short, it's impossible. Even the government can't do something like moving an entire city of people, let alone other people. Do ordinary immortals feel that they can't even compare with human government institutions? Su Shinxing asked Qin Xingyan. Senior, please don't talk to me for the time being. I need to organize my thoughts and rebuild my outlook on life. Qin Xingyan's face was as lonely as snow. He squatted in the corner and rubbed the folds of the sofa. I always feel that I'm so stupid for working hard to cultivate immortality since I was a child. What's wrong? Recently, the spiritual energy has been thin, and the whole world has become a degenerate age. There's nothing we can do about it. Anyway, in my impression, even the 5 Thunder execution method is not as powerful as missiles. I have to admit that human beings are stronger now, and I'm just a small ant. Can't I bow to the biggest evil force of human beings? The Earth Lowly argued with a red face. Su Shinxing gave a hollow laugh and looked away. Indeed, the immortals and gods he had met so far were all very weak. Except for some mysterious means, in terms of various abilities, there was a certain gap between them and the role that modern human society could play, not to mention the strength. Human beings were creatures that could blow themselves up for fun. Doesn't anyone feel that the topic has gone sideways again? Chihaya Fukuyama, the only conscience of Sakura apartment at the moment, said indifferently. Therefore, everyone could only pull the discussion back to the more serious topic of how to solve the problem of the spiritual vein. However, after ejecting the scientific representative, now the group of people felt that they had exhausted all their abilities. However, Su Xinxing, who usually didn't use his brain, touched his chin thoughtfully at this moment. Earth God, you just said that the girl who was sacrificed as a human sacrifice designed a ritual to block the gap of the spiritual vein by imitating the legend of Nuwa patching up the sky. With the ritual, the gap of the spiritual vein was successfully blocked, right? Yes, that's right. She was there at the time, so it's not difficult to recreate the ritual. Earth God lowly nodded. Since it's an imitation, that is to say, the effect of the ritual is weaker than the legendary Nuwa patching up the sky, right? Therefore, Su Xinxing continued to make inferences. In theory, that's right, but so what? Earth God lowly asked in confusion. In that case, can't we go directly to find the 5-color stone used by Nuwa to patch up the sky? Su Xinxing no longer kept her in suspense and said seriously. Are you kidding me? Do you know how many years it has been since the prehistoric era? Earth God lowly, who was full of hope, suddenly became depressed. If there are no clues at all, of course it's not easy to find it. Su Xinxing smiled slightly. But don't we happen to have a group of guests who have lived from that era to the present, catching rabbits on the moon? Let them do some of their work. It's not impossible to help them return to this world. Chapter 278. Because Su Xinxing threw Gui Fong to the moon on a whim, he naturally had to find a way to land on the moon. After rejecting Su Xinxing's suggestion that they could just jump up from such a short distance away, Xing Yan A Dream decided to go to the moon the way they had before. But you said that your master spent 0.5 kilogram of spirit stones to send you to the moon, right? I don't even have a few pebbles, let alone spirit stones, Su Xinxing said with some hesitation. It doesn't matter. My master paid because he couldn't beat the gatekeeper. Now he doesn't have to worry about not being able to beat him. Su Xinxing was stunned. He felt that there was something wrong with Qin Xingyan's actions. But after he asked clearly, he found that there was nothing wrong with it. When people in the cultivation world went to the moon to cultivate, they basically relied on a portal that led directly to the moon. There were different opinions about the origin of the portal. Some people said that Ho Yi built it in order to chase after Chang'e. Some people thought that Wu Gang secretly built it in order to sneak back to Earth. Some people said that it was specially built by ancient cultivators who had great magical powers in order to go to the moon. The appearance of the portal looked like a huge door carved out of stone, and there were 2 mighty stone lions standing at the door. Once someone wanted to open the portal to the moon, the 2 stone lions would come to life and ask the visitor for a toll, because opening the portal consumed a lot of spiritual energy. Those who were not strong enough could only pass through the portal by taking out a lot of spirit stones. But if someone had a certain strength, as long as they could defeat the 2 stone lions that were integrated with the portal could also be opened. It was just that the 2 stone lions had extraordinary strength, and they also had the aura of the sun. It was very likely that they were made by a god, who symbolized the sun. Ordinary cultivators who had not stepped into the Jinan Dao were not their opponents at all, not to mention that they were proficient in joint attacks. Therefore, after the Age of Chaos, if one wanted to open the portal, they could only rely on providing a lot of spirit stones. But now there was a guy like Su Xinxing who broke the rules, so this step could naturally be omitted. Of course, the portal was not located in Jiangjin, but in a city slightly further away. Therefore, other than Su Xinxing who could teleport physically and use the high-speed rail for ordinary people, it would be unrealistic to travel there on foot. Therefore, after some discussion, everyone decided to take the transportation provided by the angel-like androgynous Lux from the Space Administration, the shuttle that turned into a van. This thing looks familiar. In terms of basic structure, it's very similar to the zither on the Violet, but it's different, because he was worried about leaving the cancer of the world on Earth, and was also brought along by Su Xinxing on this trip. As soon as she got on the space-time shuttle that turned into a van, the girl muttered to herself, "Oh, could it be that you know how to drive this?" Su Xinxing was overjoyed. Although he could drive this thing when it was in manual mode because of Ing Chi's blessing, the journey this time was longer. If he could use the space warp jump that came with this thing, he should be able to get there faster. Most civilian technology will develop toward simpler operations with the progress of the times. Ing shooed Su Xinxing away and sat in the driver's seat. She put the worn-out suitcase aside and began to operate on the translucent panel. And a design, when there is no generation gap, will basically retain the basic design.
Huh.
Why can this thing be pulled out? Can you explain it in words that I can understand? Su Xinxing looked at Ing, who was holding the handbrake lever with a curious face, and asked with cold sweat all over his face. Sure, no problem. What exactly is the problem? Although Su Xinxing was complaining in his heart, as the girl's words, the exterior of the van began to change. Many things similar to circuits covered the surface of the van and bloomed with a sky blue light. The van, or rather, the bottom of the shuttle also appeared with a faint halo. Fortunately, it was still in the courtyard of Sakura Apartments, so no one saw it. Otherwise, it would have been taken and posted on Weibo or WeChat Moments. So, where is your destination this time? Ing asked. Wait a minute, if this thing can jump now, Su Xinxing touched his chin and asked, can't we just drive it directly to the moon? Unfortunately, that's not possible. Of course, the one who answered him was not Ing, who knew little about this world, but Qin Xingyan. The cultivators on the moon are not like ascetics who eat dirt on the surface of the moon. In fact, about 600 years ago, a cultivator called Wan, who was the first to reach the moon with a chair-shaped artifact and found a blessed place on the moon that had been abandoned for God knows how long, the Guanghan's secret realm. However, he accidentally triggered the traps in the secret realm and only had time to send a message back to Earth before he died in the secret realm. And, because the Guanghan's secret realm was triggered, it sank into a space that mortals could not see. But later, as the portal to the moon was discovered, the cultivators who passed through the portal found themselves directly in the gap between the Guanghan's secret realm and the real moon. As if recalling his experience on the moon, Qin Xingyan paused before continuing. It's a very mysterious place, empty and pale, but full of spiritual energy and suitable for cultivation. The most precious thing is that every 50 years, a laurel leaf will appear there. Not the laurel tree on Earth, but the fallen leaf from the laurel tree in the Guanghan's secret realm. Although the saying that the immortal laurel is one of the 10 innate spiritual roots may be made up by later generations, no one can deny that the sacred tree has survived since the prehistoric times. Even if it's just a fallen leaf, it is undoubtedly a treasure of heaven and earth. Over the years, many battles have been caused because of this. What does this have to do with us going to the moon? Su Xinxing asked curiously. We're looking for the group of people from the Guifang. It has nothing to do with the cultivators from Earth who went to the moon, right? When he pulled the Guifang out of the reincarnation gap, he directly threw it to the back of the moon instead of the Guanghan's secret realm. If the group of people from the Guifang really lived from the prehistoric times to the present, then I think the restriction of the Guanghan's secret realm may not have much effect on them. After a moment of silence, Qin Xingyan voiced his guess. I'm afraid that they have now found a way to secretly enter and settle down in the Guanghan's secret realm. After all, compared to the barren surface of the moon, the Guanghan's secret realm is obviously more attractive. Why do you emphasize secretly? Su Xinxing continued to ask. If it's not secretly, then it's a bigger problem. The girl sighed. If they want to swagger into the Guanghan's secret realm and take everything for themselves, I don't think those cultivators will sit by and do nothing. Chapter 279. Su Xinxing didn't expect that throwing the Guifang to the moon on a whim would have such repercussions. He couldn't help but scratch his head. If he had known, he would have thrown them to Europa. Since they have a way to enter the Guanghan's secret realm from the moon's surface, then I should be able to do it too. A moment later, Su Xinxing clenched his fists, feeling that Qin Xingyan's method was too troublesome. It would be faster if he just did it himself. Or, do you think I can't break through that layer of restriction? I've never doubted your strength. That's the key problem too. Qin Xingyan sighed. If you use too much force and destroy the Guanghan's secret realm or something, then what if you accidentally beat those innocent cultivators and civilians of the Guifang into little pancakes? Go to the underworld and bring them back. Well, because those people of the Guifang hadn't been reincarnated for too long, who knew what their souls had become? Perhaps there really wasn't any other way. After all, Su Xinxing wasn't Sun Wukong. Although the Book of Life and Death really did exist in this world, that thing was more like a little book of death. It was used by those perverts in the underworld to finish off people who had lived too long. Even if it was destroyed, there was no way to resurrect people. Since Su Xinxing had no objections, then naturally they continued to head to the moon portal. After Qin Xingyan told her the location, Ing closed her eyes, as if thinking about something. But if you looked closely, you would find that her lips were moving imperceptibly. Although perception wasn't Su Xinxing's strong point, he could still vaguely hear the girl say things like consciousness connection, violet, surface information loading, find and calculate again, and so on. Not long after, the girl opened her eyes, and then her fingers quickly tapped on the virtual screen a few times. Immediately, the light on the valve became even brighter. Just as Su Xinxing was worried that it might attract curious passers-by, the shuttle disguised as a van disappeared with a whoosh. On the other hand, Su Xinxing and the others felt a sudden tremor. The scenery outside the window became as strange as a kaleidoscope, but also contained some regularity and a mixture of many colors. The aurora on the roof of the van became even more gorgeous. This was a sign that the photon furnace in the van was operating at a high load. After an unknown amount of time, it could be 5 minutes, or it could be 5 seconds, the tremor stopped, and in its place was replaced by a feeling of impact, as if someone had slammed the van to the ground. Because the impact was not small, the people in the van were caught off guard and were thrown to the side. Qin Xingyan cleverly held onto the armrest and luckily survived. Chihaya Fukuyama and Asahi Sakura Kanji hugged each other and rolled around in the back seat. Su Xinxing's head fell into the back of the van. Ying's old suitcase hit Emoli's forehead, causing a red patch to appear on the girl's forehead. Other than Chiketsu, who didn't know anything, and Songyu, who volunteered to stay at home to take care of Chiketsu, who was also an ordinary person, only Loli, who was not feeling well, was spared. So this is what you meant by no problem, no problem? Su Xinxing struggled to get up from the pile of girls. This sentence made me feel like I was writing a Marvin novel and complained to Ing. I don't know if it was Su Xinxing's illusion, or if Ying's face really did turn a little red. She turned her head slightly to avoid Su Xinxing's gaze, and then continued to say casually, "It's within an acceptable margin of error." So in the alien's understanding, landing safely and falling half to death for ordinary people mean the same thing? Regardless, it's good enough as long as we can reach our destination safely. After Su Xinxing opened the door, what he saw was not the huge rock door that he expected, but a silent, quarry? Did you drive to the wrong place? Su Xinxing looked at Ing suspiciously. It's rude of you to look at me like I'm a directionally challenged person. Ing protested with an expressionless face. I only did the warp after careful calculations. How could I make such a low-level mistake? After saying that, a moment later, probably out of conscience, she added in a small voice, "The reason I haven't been home for 3,000 years is definitely not because I couldn't find the way home, but because I was capturing and housing UKs. So you're not a directionally challenged person after getting lost for 3,000 years? Then how bad do you have to be considered a directionally challenged person?" So Su Xinxing hurriedly asked the people in the car to get out and ask for directions. If it was really just an error, at least it would mean that they were still on Earth. If they ended up in Centaurus or something, then Su Xinxing could only draw his sword and use teleportation physics, which he hadn't used for a long time, to make the world feel pain. After searching for directions, mainly asking for directions, Su Xinxing and the others received a piece of good news and a piece of bad news. The good news was that they were still on Earth, and Ing, who had been lost for 3,000 years, miraculously didn't get lost. I only get lost in the dimensional sea. They really did drive the car to the location of the portal. The bad news was that the portal had been blown up a year ago due to illegal operations in the quarry, and the remains of the portal might still be in the pile of rubble on the ground. That stone lion with the aura of the sun outside the portal should only attack people who want to enter the portal or deliberately destroy it. Those mortals probably did it purely to make more money, and didn't have any hostility, so the stone lion didn't react before the door was blown up. Qin Xingyan, who had been stunned for a long time, finally came to her senses. After a long while, she raised her own conjecture. Also, if I'm not wrong, I'm afraid that some cultivators moved this quarry here in order to hide the truth about the door. I've heard my master mention this before. Su Shinqing. By the way, because the portal that was suspected to be a historical and cultural heritage was blown up, the quarry had been sealed off by the local government, and the boss had run away with his sister-in-law, so when Su Shinqing and the others arrived, there was no one around. Fortunately, that was the case. Otherwise, the van that fell from the sky might become a new urban legend. In any case, the path to the moon through the portal was basically a dead end. And after understanding what happened here, Su Shinqing and the others were faced with a new problem. How on earth could they get to the moon? Chapter 280. Sure enough, it's better to jump to the moon. Su Shinqing immediately seized the opportunity to repeat his words. I'll try my best to control the power of the Su family's door-opening technique, and try not to affect the people inside. What's that door-opening technique? There's no other way. We can only...
Qin Xingyan sighed.
Just as he was about to accept Su Shinqing's proposal, his eyes suddenly lit up as if he had thought of something. He shifted his gaze to Emily. The girl was lying on the seat in the car dispiritedly, with 2 X-shaped band-aids on her smooth forehead. Emily, do you remember the platform on the Kunlun tram's license plate?
Qin Xingyan asked.
Emily shook her head with an expression that said, it's so troublesome, so I don't remember. Speaking of which, recently a new dessert shop opened near Jiangjin University. The brownies there are very popular, Qin Xingyan said with a smile. I remember there's a Guanghan station there. Emily immediately said. Chihaya Fukuyama couldn't help but glance at Emily. This little guy clearly knows everything, but he always seems to pretend that he doesn't care. Chihaya, Salma, do you also want to eat brownies? I can help you to queue up. Unfortunately, the meaning behind her glance was misunderstood by Miko Salma beside her. No need. I'm from the light oil cake, a cake with less than 40% oil. Brownies belong to the heavy oil cake. Humph, evil. Emily snorted contemptuously. Hey, you clearly enjoyed the Nagasaki cake I brought from Japan. I don't refuse anyone. Emily straightened her flat chest and said without hesitation. What's there to be proud of? Chihaya Fukuyama couldn't help but complain. Meanwhile, Asahi Sakurakanji could only laugh dryly as he tried to be the peacemaker. Ignoring the girl's argument, Su Shinqing understood what Qin Xingyan meant. Are you planning to go to the moon from Kunlun? That's right. From there, we might be able to enter the Guanghan secret realm. Qin Xingyan said excitedly. Kunlun, the place closest to the heaven realm. In the past, in order to find Su Shinqing, who had wandered to another world, she had once taken a strange tram with Emily from there, heading towards the Jade capital, Longhuan, where all the written history of the world was recorded. Originally, Qin Xingyan only had a vague impression of the bus stop there. He vaguely remembered that it mentioned something about Guanghan, so he tried to verify it with Emily. He didn't expect Emily to actually remember the bus stop that had thousands of bus stop names. Indeed, because there are no people from the Earth realm in Kunlun, the people inside are either descendants of the gods or ancient mutants. In addition, ordinary people can't enter at all, so it's not known by self-cultivators. But that tram is really interesting. Su Shinqing thought for a moment and agreed with Qin Xingyan's proposal. It's been deeply sealed for so long, it shouldn't be a problem to leak a little. He waved at Emily, and the girl ran to Su Shinqing's side with small steps. Su Shinqing didn't say much. He wrapped his right arm around Mo Lee's slender waist and kissed the girl's forehead gently. Everyone else was stunned by his actions. Mr. Su, could it be that you're the kind of lolicon that the world talks about? Asahi Sakurakanji said, somewhat at a loss. Cold, calm down, Asahi. Anyway, call the police first. What's the number for Huaxia's police? Chihaya Fukuyama calmly took out his cell phone, but because his right hand was trembling slightly, he couldn't successfully unlock the standby screen several times. Ing was strangely silent for a moment with blank eyes, as if she was using some kind of brain connection to find out what Su Xinxing's actions meant. Then, she showed a relieved expression. 3 years of hard work. Death penalty is not a loss. Well, because there was too much junk information on the Earth's network, she seemed to have found something strange. Tisk, although I already knew that the child was the legal wife, but in front of so many people. What's with this feeling of failure? Even Qin Xingyan whispered to himself with a complicated expression. But then, under everyone's gaze, Mo Lee's body slightly grew, and even the band-aid on his forehead fell off. Ing looked at Mo Lee's slightly growing chest, then touched her own cliffs. She tilted her head and showed a hesitant expression, as if she was wondering if she should try this method. Unsealing to this extent should be enough, right? Su Xinxing let out a long sigh and looked at Mo Lee's current appearance with satisfaction. Mr. Landlord, more. Mo Lee stared at Su Xinxing, blinked, and said cutely, Hey, that's enough. If this continues, I'll almost reach the first stage of unsealing. I don't want to help you clean up the mess after you go berserk. Humph, Baldy. The little girl turned her head and whispered, I heard you. So Su Xinxing, who had a fake smile on his face, pressed his hands on his temples and then used a little force. Oh, meow, meow, meow. Mo Lee let out a cute cry of sadness. After playing around for a while, Su Xinxing and the others became serious again. I'll provide you with the necessary magic. If it wasn't for the fact that you can't bring us to Kunlun with you due to the deep seal, I would have wanted to continue the seal for a while to observe the situation. Mo Lee's eyes still had traces of tears, and she still angrily turned her back to Su Xinxing. In short, everyone stand in a circle around Mo Lee. Although it seemed that Mo Lee was still angry, Su Xinxing, who was of the same mind as her, knew that the little girl was just throwing a tantrum. She would still do what she should do. I keep feeling like we're doing something bad. Asahi Sakurakanji held Chihaya Fukuyama's hand and stood beside Mo Lee according to Su Xinxing's instructions, and said with a bitter smile, Indeed, standing in a circle around a little girl squatting on the ground felt like they were watching her sulk, but also like they were performing some kind of cult ritual. It was indeed very subtle in all aspects. Okay, Mo Lee, hurry up and do it. After everyone stood in place, Su Xinxing couldn't help but urge. So Mo Lee stood up reluctantly, her legs together, and her hands stretched out towards the sky, looking like the word yeah. Then she opened her mouth and shouted, Stella, are you trying to self-destruct? Speaking of which, at this time, you should say roam. Before Su Xinxing had time to complain, he was surrounded by a soft light, and then the surrounding scenery changed again. After everything stabilized, what appeared in front of them was a mountain, and on top of the mountain, there was an ancient building full of celestial characteristics. It was as if the continuous mountain was draped in brocade clothes. This was the gateway to heaven, Kunlun. Chapter 281. You guys are here again. A burly man stood in front of Su Xinxing's group like a mountain of flesh, walking almost half of the road. He is Lu Wu, the leader of the demon beast Tu Wu and the strange beast Qin Yuan. He was appointed by the Celestial Emperor to be the guardian of Kunlun. Su Xinxing introduced him to the group of people behind him who had never seen him before. I once pressed him to the ground and beat him up. Can you not add that last sentence? The corners of Lu Wu's mouth twitched. Qin Xingyan felt that if it weren't for the fact that he couldn't beat Su Xinxing, he would have swallowed him whole.
Okay.
He was once pressed to the ground and beaten up by Mo Lee. Lu Wu covered his face and ran away. After Su Xinxing pulled him back, The group of people arrived at the tram station at the peak of Kunlun Mountain without any obstructions. Is it just my imagination? It feels like there are more names on the platform. Qin Xingyan stood in front of the platform and looked at the number of words on the platform. At the bottom of the platform, he could see the name of the platform that seemed to be written with a brush. Because her hand covered part of it, he couldn't see it clearly. However, he could vaguely see that it started with the word Huan and ended with the word Xiang. It said that a demon beast who contributed to the construction of this tram suggested to add it. That guy's strength is not bad, but as a demon beast, his ability is very strange. It's also my first time seeing that kind of demon. Lu Wu casually explained. Then he looked at Su Xinxing awkwardly. The tram you're waiting for is about to arrive. I've already prepared the tickets for you.
Can you let me go now?
Originally, Su Xinxing wanted to ask him for more help. After all, Lu Wu seemed to be quite famous in Kunlun. However, for some reason, when he saw Asahi Sakura Kanji drooling at him and Lu Wu, Su Xinxing felt a chill in his heart. Thus, he simply let Lu Wu go under her disappointed gaze. Not long after Lu Wu disappeared like a gust of wind, just as he had said, the carriage appeared in front of him. After sitting in the car, Qin Xingyan found that it was different from the last time. This time, the person pushing the dining car was not the fat woman, but a skeleton in a suit and tie, who looked like a successful person. When Ing saw him, she shouted, "This is a UK," and jumped up. However, Su Xinxing, who had sharp eyes and agile hands, knocked her back. This left the former with tears in her eyes. She hugged her head and squatted in her seat as she mumbled, "Why are there so many UKs in this world? It doesn't make sense." Qin Xingyan and the others were also not interested in the tram meal because of the other party's appearance. On the other hand, Emily had no qualms and ordered a steak-set meal from the other party. The skeleton picked up a tray and placed it in front of Emily. Then, he covered the tray with a metal cover. He knocked on the cover with a golden spoon and opened the cover. On the originally empty tray, there was a sizzling steak. Molly clapped her hands in amazement. Her round eyes shone as she stared at the food shield in the other party's hand. Su Xinxing felt that if he hadn't been there, this girl might have snatched the food shield from the other party. There were a few small bean-like things next to the steak on the tray. While the steak was still sizzling, the small bean-like things had completed the process of sprouting, growing, blossoming, and bearing fruit. The fruits that were slightly bigger than a fist finally fell next to the steak. After Emily cut it open with a knife, she found that it was filled with pasta, chips, mashed potatoes, fried eggs, and green peas. This is amazing. Chihaya Fukuyama, who had lived as a mortal for the first half of his life, could not help but exclaim in admiration. Emily did not say anything. She just ate in big bites. Because the place they were going to this time was the moon, it was obviously much closer than the Sea of Cladric. Not long after Emily finished eating, the announcement of the arrival of the tram sounded from the loudspeaker. Thus, the group got off the tram one after another. Once on land, they felt that this place was very different from Earth. The gravity here was much weaker. Interestingly, the air did not seem to be much different from Earth's. Theoretically speaking, such a weak gravity should not be able to maintain the atmosphere. Of course, this was a small matter. Except for Sakura Kanji, who needed Su Xinxing's protection, the others were monsters who could probably survive in a vacuum. The air was not too important. But strangely, there was a bright moon hanging in the sky. That's right. Theoretically speaking, they had already reached the moon, but there was another moon in the sky. At first, Su Xinxing thought that he had made a mistake and mistook Earth for the moon. But not long after, a huge blue planet appeared in the sky. He knew that he had not made a mistake. There was actually another moon here. Where on Earth is this? Judging from the air and the not-so-barren environment, it doesn't look like the surface of the moon, Su Xinxing muttered to himself as he looked at Qin Xingyan. The latter shook his head, indicating that this was not the place between the Guanghan secret realm and the surface of the moon. Since that was the case, it seemed that the Kunlun tram had directly sent them to the Guanghan secret realm. If this is the Guanghan secret realm, those people from the Guifang might have already entered. Should we go look for them? Su Shinshing suggested. But before the others could answer, Chihaya Fukuyama let out a cry of surprise. Su Shinshing followed her gaze and saw that not far away, there was a towering laurel tree. Well, there were no clouds on the moon. In short, it was a very tall laurel tree, standing there like a pillar of the world. Is that the legendary immortal laurel? Qin Xingyan, who was familiar with most of the Chinese myths, couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. It's so huge. No wonder it's called one of the 10 great innate spirit roots. Su Shinshing didn't feel much about it. He still remembered that in the lattice world he had transmigrated to, there was a world built on the crown of a world tree. Below the world tree was a mass of black clouds, and below that was rolling lava. In terms of size, that world tree was much bigger than the laurel tree in the distance. Moreover, that laurel tree doesn't look so good? Su Shinshing frowned slightly. Even though he didn't know much about plants, Su Shinshing could still feel that the laurel tree seemed to be withering, and its life force was rapidly draining away. If he associated it with the rumor that it would drop a leaf every 50 years, he was afraid that if he didn't do anything, it would be on the verge of death. Chapter 282. To be honest, although they were not sure if this was the secret realm of Guanghan, this place was obviously too shabby for a so-called paradise. Aside from the fact that the spiritual energy here was much denser than on Earth, there was basically no living thing in sight. There were only bare stones everywhere. There seemed to be some jagged rocks near the undying laurel. Judging from the size of the huge laurel, they were at least 100 meters tall. Su Shinshing looked around and found that there were buildings similar to ancient palaces built on the jagged rocks. However, most of them were covered by the strange rocks, so they were not easy to spot. There are people in this place, and there are quite a few of them. After everyone looked away from the laurel in the distance, Qin Xingyan pointed to his forehead with his index finger. My mind-reading ability reacted, but it's too far away. There's no way to determine who it is. What about the direction? Su Shinshing asked. Qin Xingyan pointed in the direction of the laurel tree as expected. In any case, the towering laurel tree should be the most important thing in this space, so there should be no mistake in going in that direction. After coming to this conclusion, everyone began to move in that direction. By the way, although there were no walls around, the seemingly endless wasteland actually had a boundary. Before they set off, Su Shinshing picked up a stone and threw it in the opposite direction of the laurel tree. However, before the stone was burned by the friction with the air, it hit the invisible boundary and made a loud noise that made the entire space tremble. Su Shinshing was afraid that if he continued the experiment, he would directly break the space. In fact, Ing was already looking at him with a look of, is this guy really not harmful? So, Su Shinshing did not continue the experiment. As the saying goes, a mountain is far from a mountain. Although Su Shinshing's group, except for Asahi Sakurakanji, almost all of them had inhuman endurance, they still could not reach the laurel tree after walking for a long time. This made Su Shinshing a little anxious. No, if this goes on... His face was a little pale. Yes, I'm afraid that the disaster caused by Jiangjin's spirit vein will gradually spread. Qin Xingyan's face was also very serious. If this goes on, we won't be able to make it in time for the school's anniversary. Su Shinshing probably did not hear Qin Xingyan's words and continued to speak with a pale face. Wait, is this what you care about? Qin Xingyan's face, which was originally serious, suddenly collapsed. Of course, how much effort do you think it's worth it? Su Shinshing said seriously. It's obvious that you're enjoying yourself. When something can't be changed, the only thing we can do is to enjoy it. No. We Xingyan. Or rather, you just want to see maid outfits for yourself. Xingyan and Xingyan, that guy that Xingyan was Xingyan. Mr. Landlord, there's someone's voice in front. Oh, is that so? Su Shinshing, who was still trying to divert the topic to whether the maid's dress should be a long skirt or a short skirt, immediately became righteous. I don't know if it's the people from Guifang or the indigenous people here. The indigenous people on the moon, Chang Yi and Wu Gang, Qin Xingyan complained. Maybe there's Kagaya Haim, who took the elixir of immortality. Chihaya Fukuyama, who came from another cultural circle, also said jokingly. Oh right, there's also the rabbit that pounded the medicine. Asahi Sakura Kanji, who rarely showed her girly nature, added with a smile. Ing, who came from another world and knew nothing about this, searched Baidu through the violet and then gave them some knowledge with a serious face. There's a saying that the one who pounded the medicine was a toad, that is, a toad. Jade rabbit is just a misinterpretation of jade toad. There's another saying that Chang Yi turned into a toad and pounded the medicine on the moon, Chihaya Fukuyama and Asahi Sakura Kanji. I don't want to know this kind of unromantic knowledge at all. The group of people were not nervous at all as they argued and moved forward. Soon, the others also heard the human voice that Mo Li mentioned. But when they listened carefully, they found that there was something wrong with the sound. Rather than saying that it was a human voice, it was more like a battle cry. This sound, is there still a war over there? Su Shinqing, who had heard similar sounds in many worlds, frowned and found that things were not that simple. Only battles with cold weapons in ancient times would have such battle cries, right? Qin Xingyan, on the other hand, was puzzled by the sound. Whether it's firearms or a battle between cultivators, it shouldn't be like this. Instead of guessing here, why don't we just go and take a look? Chihaya Fukuyama's words sounded very straightforward, but Su Shinqing saw some hesitation on the girl's face. After all, before she became a god, this girl was just an ordinary high school girl. She must have some fear of the battlefield. It's not a good idea for us to go there together. It's easy for us to be wiped out. Emoli, you stay here with Chihaya and Sakura Kanji as support. I'll go there with Xingyan and Miss Alien to take a look first. So, he said without hesitation. For those who were familiar with him, especially those who were familiar with his combat prowess, it was a complete joke that he was wiped out. After all, this guy could still be alive and kicking if he fell into a star. Let alone an enemy from the era of cold weapons. Even if the moon boomed right now, he would probably be able to come out unscathed. However, because Shunshan Qianzhao and the others did not know Su Shinqing's true strength and only vaguely knew that he was very powerful, this excuse still seemed plausible and irrefutable for the time being. After letting the three girls rest, Su Shinqing and the others began to approach the battlefield. However, before they could get far, a red light smashed into the ground not far in front of them with a bang and blasted a large hole in the ground. Then, a girl in ragged clothes climbed out of the hole, coughing as she ran away from the battlefield. It seemed that she was planning to escape the battlefield. However, the direction she ran in was a little strange. After bypassing a 2-meter-tall rock, she came face to face with Su Shinqing and the others. Both sides were stunned by this sudden meeting. The other side was probably surprised and shaken by the sudden appearance of outsiders like Su Shinqing, but Su Shinqing was surprised by something else. On the girl's head, there was a pair of long snow-white rabbit ears. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.